Hey, everybody, this is Craig Garber. Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar. Man, I got a great guest, super talented guy, very humble.
Okay.
Gordon Kennedy is a first call, session player. He's a great writer. He's written tons of songs you've listened to, and you'll find out what those are in a minute. Quick thank you to Greg Martin, who's from the Kentucky Headhunters, not only a tremendous guitar player, but one of the kindest, nicest human beings you run across. So thank you for hooking us up, Greg. And also make sure you go to everyonelovesguitar.com/subscribe and subscribe to the show. If you're watching us already on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, that little emoji icon that looks like a bell, I think, because that helps us in the Google algorithm. And thanks for your support. All right, let me tell you about Gordon. Multi-Grammy award-winning songwriter and record producer, as well as a successful touring and session guitarist in Nashville. He didn't get all those gold and platinum records up on the wall there randomly, trust me. He co-wrote the hit song Change the World, recorded by, of course, Eric Clapton. The song got Record of the Year for Clapton and spent 81 weeks on the top of the charts. In 2007, Gordon also got a Grammy for Best Pop Instrumental Album, co-producing, composing, and performing on Peter Frampton's instrumental rock Fingerprints album. Gordon was a member of the Christian rock band Whiteheart for 6 years in the 80s. They were very popular. If you don't know them, they were a very popular contemporary Christian band that had a lot of #1 hits. They released 11 studio albums from the early 80s to the late 90s. And Gordon got that gig. He substituted a few shows for his high school friend, Dan Huff. That's a great way to drop a name. My high school friend, Dan Huff. I like that.
Yeah.
Which led, Dan left to go to be Dan Huff, and led to a permanent position for Gordon. Gordon was in the band for 5 years and 4 records from 85 to 89. And then Dan, of course, as a producer, later hired Gordon to play along a lot of his records that became gold and platinum recordings. Gordon then formed another contemporary Christian band called Dogs of Peace. They released 2 albums, one in 1996 and one in 2016. Talk about a little gap, man, right?
Yeah, we were due.
The second one's tough, huh? I checked out the band. I would encourage you, if you've never heard of Dogs of Peace, I would really encourage you to listen to them. It's edgy, as what I wrote, edgy, kind of alt rock. But man, these songs really groove. And the band, I can't believe you only did one. This band is super tight, man.
Well, when we did the first record, the industry sort of politely showed us the door back in '96. I remember the CCM magazine article saying, reviewing our record, that it sounded too much like the Beatles, too much like the Eagles, the James Gang, Pink Floyd, and all these references. Of course, we're sitting around going, and the problem is what,
Yeah.
They were very, they just, like I said, I think the new thing was sort of DC talk and rap music. So we were older guys at the time that, the industry, they probably weren't looking for anything new like us at the time, But so that was the reason why we didn't do another record for 20 years. We sort of just looked at each other one day and dared ourselves to do another one, and did it, kind of did it over the course of a few years, just sort of as the window of time would open for different guys in the band. And it was me, Jimmy Lee Sloas, who is the top bass player.
Yeah.
And phenomenal. John Hammond, one of my favorite drummers on the planet. And Blair Masters, keyboard playing friend of mine. And then the engineer was a guy I went to Belmont with named Jeff Balding. And of course, he's, calls me in recent years to ask me if I would play on Don Henley's new record. So he's working with those guys, and just, top of the field, each one of these guys tops in their field. And so we did the first record because the record label Sparrow Records asked Jimmy Lee and I if we would do a record for the label. Their pop rock band that they had on the label at the time was a group called PFR. And they sort of threw in the towel that year. And so there was a void on the label for a release of that kind of music. Jimmy Lee had produced them. I had written and played on some of their records, written for them. So the guy running the label just said, would you guys just do a record for us? So that's how it started. But, there wasn't a commitment to tour and do all that kind of stuff. So it wound up being that we put the record out to little fanfare, other than maybe some critical notoriety. And then 20 years later, we decided, let's do that again. And even if it's just as an offering
Yeah.
of what, you know, for what we believe. And if we do nothing more than take this record and just put it down at the altar and walk away and say, I hope this is pleasing, then that's the reason why we did it. But it's we love the record, the second record too.
It's great. You guys were so tight. I was really pleased to listen to that. You know, I said, well, let me check this out. Gordon's written loads of hits. I mean, we couldn't spend the time to talk about all of them, but he's written loads of hits for artists like Garth Brooks. He's written a lot of music for Garth, Bonnie Raitt, Alison Krauss, Stevie Nicks, Faith Hill, Don Henley, as you just mentioned, Tim McGraw, and Carrie Underwood. And he's multiple tracks licensed in a lot of first-tier movies. As a performer, as a player, he's performed on albums by Ricky Skaggs, Don Henley, Kenny Loggins. I've had a lot of Kenny's guys on the show. He's a very demanding guy. I know that. Like, high expectations. I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean, he's got.
Well, and Don Henley's like that too. There's a reason why you love their records. And while it may be tough to sort of get something by those guys, and it's, you know, very critical ears there. In fact, Jeff told me that when he mixed the first song on the Cass County record to send to Don to reference, Don sent back an email that said API console, huh? He could tell by
hear the console.
He heard the console.
Wow.
So, but then, you know, cue up an Eagles record and see if those things aren't, you know, just the craftsmanship and the almost perfect. I know there's no such thing as perfect, but I mean, they have this, everything that's in it is there because it matters.
Yeah.
So whatever it takes for these guys to produce what they've done over the years, like, that's what it takes, you know?
Yeah, there's no fat in any of those records, man, at all. Reba McEntire, Michael McDonald, Leanne Rimes, Bruce Hornsby. Man, did you play with either with Bruce or with Reba? Did you play with George Marinelli or work with George?
No, he's kind of like the guy that I keep getting close to, but have never worked directly with. He's toured with Bonnie Raitt over the years, so I've gone to the shows and watched him playing for her over the years. I did the Hornsby Skaggs record, their duet record. Wrote for that and played a dobro thing, a fretted dobro on the song that I wrote. And went and played on a TV thing that they did. I think the show was called Cross Country CMT, and it was Skaggs and Hornsby, which was phenomenal. Those two guys, I think the idea must have come from when Hornsby invited Skaggs to join him on stage at the Ryman after he'd done his show, to come do the encore with him. And Skaggs walks out. I'm thinking, well, how is this going to be, these two guys? And I watched lightning hit the stage just over and over again. And then subsequently they got together to do a record. And then I remember when I knew that I had a song that was going to go on there, I got a call from Ricky one day. And I had been in awe of him since the 80s, you know, dreamed of getting a song recorded by him, just anything to be associated with Ricky Skaggs. And he calls me and says, hey, son, could you bring your dad's dobro, the Harper Valley PTA dobro? Could you bring it down here? Because I had used that to do the solo on the demo. And so I thought, well, he wants to borrow that dobro. So at the time, it was in the Musicians Hall of Fame and Museum behind glass. And I had been told by Joe Chambers that runs the thing, if you ever need these guitars, you know, come get them. Dad's 335 and the dobro were both behind glass down there because he was inducted in 2007 with the A-Team players from Nashville. So I went down there, and little did I know, I had gone down there to get it 2 or 3 times before I realized that these guys with these big suction cups would come out and stick them to the glass and, you know, sweat beading up, and take this glass off just to get the dobro out so I could take it to use on a session. So I thought, well, it needs to be something special. Well, Skaggs is calling, and I'm thinking that he wants to borrow the dobro, but I take it down to his studio and realize within the first, because I hand it to him like I'm going to caddy for him, you know.
Right.
Here's the dobro. And he said, no, I want you to play it. I want you to do the same thing that you did on the demo. So that wound up putting me on the TV show with him as well.
That's cool, man.
Yeah. So I always think about, just if I can interject something here, as a songwriter, being a songwriter ultimately will also let you do everything else you know how to do at some point. So by virtue of the fact that I wrote a song that they chose to put on their record, I got to go play on the record. I got to go do the TV thing with them. And so it's all, a lot of things come from, writing the songs, come sing that same background part. And then occasionally with a Peter Frampton or a Ricky Skaggs come produce the record with me. And so just that is the thing that happens just from writing the song sometimes.
Well, it's interesting. I was watching it's currently on now, I think on Netflix, a Crosby, Stills, Nash documentary. And it's pretty interesting. And then they interject, Neil Young in there, in and out. They had a real tumultuous relationship. And at the end of the show, they were like all kind of their CSN. They weren't on the high end, and Neil was doing well. And they all joined Neil for a full show. And he got asked, how come they're not playing any CSN songs? And he was pretty blunt. He said, hey, they don't have any songs. I got all the songs. And in this business, songs is currency, which I thought was, a little arrogant how he said it, but it's the truth.
It is the truth.
It's the truth.
As much as I care about, guitar and wanting to be a guitar player from the time I was a kid, I was also very fortunate in that in my father's basement, there were guitars and amps and an upright piano and a jukebox. So I tell people my first record player was a Seaberg 100 that played 45s, and I knew he showed me how to turn it on. All the lights would come on, and sometimes I would shock myself reaching back there. And if you touched any other part of the jukebox that was metal while you were flipping that toggle switch in the back, some grounding issue or something, and it'd zap you.
Holy.
But it didn't zap me near as much as Fannie Mae by Buster Brown, my dad's instrumental Willie and the Hand Jive, and
right.
Roger Miller records on there, and all these records. So from the time I was probably 6 years old, I would sit in front of the jukebox and songs. He brought me the first Beatles record, and songs. Or he produced Roger Miller, so it's songs. That's the thing that sort of became the main thing for me from the time I can remember. As much as I wanted to play guitar, and as many bad songs as I wrote because I wanted to be the guitar player and would wrap a song around it just to play the guitar part, I realized at some point, oh no, I need to go back to where it was, sitting in front of that jukebox. The thing that made you push A7 was a song. It wasn't what somebody could do with a piece of gear in the NAMM show booth. It was a song.
Totally.
Well, I had that healthy respect for that from the time I was a kid. Dad bringing home reel-to-reel tapes of what they'd done in the studio that day with Roger Miller, those songs. So that I had that, as, early on in my childhood, which made a great difference later.
As you're talking, I was thinking of something. The other thing, you seem very comfortable talking, outgoing. You got to be in traffic as a songwriter with, people traffic.
Yeah.
Were you always comfortable being outgoing and talking and,
Well, probably early on, Craig, the songwriting thing, it's also the kind of a occupation, if you will, that allows you to be isolated. Because as a songwriter, you can be by yourself and create this piece of music and hand the song over to your publisher. And at that point, they go to work and do everything, sort of like the last, getting a song recorded for the most part is passing a baton from one person to the next. Songwriter has it first, they make the first lap and they hand it off to the song publisher, who hands it to the plugger, who hands it to an A&R person, who hands it to the producer, who hands it to the artist. I mean, this has to be a chain of events that happen for you to get songs placed and exploited by recording artists. So, but you can, if you desire to, as a songwriter, just sort of stay in your cave and your where you write and do all that stuff. At the same time, though, a majority of songwriters in Nashville probably go to work like they're going and punching a time clock and collaborating with each other every day of the week. I've had, writers kind of shockingly say, because it's not the way I ever did anything, but hey, you want to get together and write, and yeah. And they would say, how is February the 4th? And here it is, December or whatever. And I go, well, just call me that week, because I don't even have anything to write that down on, but there are a lot of writers who do that. So they're always socializing and rubbing elbows with and collaborating with each other. But you can do it the other way too.
Interesting. All right. I'm going to say that for later. Another thought. Okay. I finished everything here. So let's get into this. Are you from Nashville, or did you move there as a kid?
I came from Shreveport. My dad and mom, my dad grew up in Shreveport. Mom was from Longview, Texas, but eventually wound up in Shreveport. Dad was I would say, a regular performer on the Louisiana Hayride.
Okay.
And at some point, and you got to back up to the time, I should back up to when my dad was 9 years old. I knew these few things about my dad and my grandfather, who I'm named after. Gordon Kennedy was a deputy sheriff down in Caddo Parish. So I knew that he died when my dad, the oldest of the three kids, was only 9.
Okay.
And I knew that my dad got his first guitar lesson when he was 9. And I knew that Tillman Franks gave him the lesson. And Tillman was an upright bass player, played bass for Johnny Horton.
Okay.
He co-wrote, "I'm a honky tonk man." That's one of Tillman's songs. That's the guy that gave Dad his first guitar lesson. And my dad's 9 years old. So I sort of figured he was the only boy in the family at this point. His dad died. I figured at some point he decided, I'll go and, figure out what the world has for me and be the man of the house and make a living and all that. Well, it's not exactly how it happened. At some point, my grandmother let me in on his daddy asked him, "How would you like to take a guitar lesson?" So it was his dad's idea, my grandfather.
Okay.
So he takes him on a Friday, and here's this 9-year-old kid who's probably, fan of Gene Autry, Roy Rogers, singing cowboy stuff. And he drops him off to see Tillman and gets a first guitar lesson on a Friday. And Tillman teaches my dad how to play a song, one of his songs that he had written called "How Far Is Heaven?" And Monday, my grandfather died.
Wow.
So my grandfather, on a lark, or whatever you want to call it, puts my dad on the path he'll be on the rest of his life. And just a few days before he checked out of this world. Yes.
Man, I got goosebumps. That is,
yeah. So Dad goes so he starts playing the guitar, and so Tillman sort of becomes like a father figure to my dad and helps him along the way. My dad gets a record deal with RCA Victor when he's 12.
Get out of town.
Like 11 or 12.
How does he even?
So you
can't even sign it. You can't even sign a contract at 12.
Guess who the guitar player on the first session my dad recorded for RCA Victor, the electric guitar player, was Chet Atkins.
Get out of here. And he's 12?
Yeah. So in that session, there's a 12-year-old kid and Chet Atkins playing guitar for him. And those two guys would run half of the big labels in Nashville within several years, So Dad is now, he gets to be 17, and somebody suggests he does a duet with this singer named Linda Brannon, and that's my mom. So they got married at 17.
Wow.
And they had me at 19 and moved to Nashville because a man named Shelby Singleton, who was a kind of a record executive, but he also produced some records. He produced Harper Valley PTA and Peggy Scott and JoJo Benson and some of these records that he would hire my dad to play on in the early 60s. But he's the one that talked Dad and Mom, and they brought me, gosh, what was I? I think I was maybe just a little over a year old.
You're the oldest of 3, right?
Yeah. But it's just me when we moved to Nashville.
Right.
And they came to town and they rented a house. I think it was $75 a month. Which don't forget to
which is probably a push.
Well, and I got to tell you a story about that afterwards. But so $75 a month, and Mom and Dad decide after 2 weeks, they gave it all of 2 weeks. Let's go back home. Let's go back to Shreveport. It's not happening as fast. as my dad would like. And I mean, first of all, they're 20.
Yeah.
You know, they're 20. And so they were going to pack up the next day and start heading back. And Shelby Singleton came back from Chicago and burst in and said, Mercury Records is going to open an office in Nashville. They want me to run it. I want you to be my number 2 guy, and I'll pay you $70 a week. So my dad could stay.
Oh my God. This is all,
yeah,
so many serendipitous. I mean, this is.
Oh, well, and then just so I don't forget, at some point in the last several years, there's a guitar luthier guy in Nashville named Jeff Senn. He makes these guitars, S-E-N-N.
I've heard of him from some other guys. Yeah.
Yeah, they're wonderful. Original Senn guitars, he calls them.
Right.
But he's worked on a couple of my guitars, and I had taken him a 57 Esquire of my dad's that grew up when I grew up in a closet with no case. It just stayed tucked away in there with junk, you know. At some point, you know, I took this guitar because whoever had it before my dad bought it from Harold Bradley, another such and great.
Wow.
had painted over the original blonde finish with like a powder blue, baby blue. And then whoever after that had the guitar stuck like a shelving contact paper over the body that had all these gold and black starbursts everywhere. And it said The Fugitive across the body. And I'm figured this is somebody's stage guitar, you know.
Nice.
It could be a lounge act somewhere, who knows. But anyway, so I take it to Jeff Senn because when I was in high school and junior in high school, I asked my dad, can I peel this paper off of this guitar and see what's underneath it? And 6 hours later, and blisters on all my fingers, I found the blue, then under that, the blonde, and stripped the finish off and played it like that for a few minutes and saw that my arm was turning the upper part of the Esquire body dark. And so I took it and had somebody just shoot a clear coat over it. And it stayed like that for years and years and years until I went to see Jeff Senn. Well, to just get cut to the chase here, when I took the guitar to Jeff, I dropped it off and then I came back when it was finished. Superb job. Went home, and still a couple of years after that, before I realized that where Jeff was living and working on those guitars was that first house I moved into.
No way.
In Tennessee. That was our first home in Tennessee. I couldn't believe it. Jeff couldn't believe it. But my dad's sitting there telling me one day about that house. And I said, is it still standing? He goes, yeah, it's just up there in Nashville. I said, oh, I thought it was in Goodlettsville because my earliest childhood memories are Goodlettsville. And I thought that was where. He said, no, it's in Nashville. And he started telling me where it was. And I called Jeff and I said, what's the address? He told me, I said, you're not going to believe this. So I went to restore a 57 Esquire and ended up returning to the first place I lived in Tennessee.
What, in your opinion, why does that stuff happen?
Well, first of all, if you live long enough, some of those things are just bound to happen.
Yeah, you know, statistics, right?
It's like if you're making enough laps, you start to notice some different things. And
right.
But you live long enough, there'll be some things like that'll happen. You know, I don't know how else to describe it other than, you know, there's that mosaic that Ricky and I did a record called Mosaic Skaggs 10 years ago now. That, you know, everybody's got this little tile that they're consumed with that is their life. And, you know, what's going on inside my tile is, you know, all that you worry about. At some point you realize, well, I'm close to this one over here, which is Dan Huff.
Right.
You know, or Carter Brown, my 5th and 6th grade football coach. If it weren't for his tile, Carter Brown, if it weren't for him, I would not be married to who I'm married to today. There probably wouldn't be a Change the World hit song and what happened there if I didn't have that guy as the 5th and 6th grade. So you start to see this big picture thing that's made up of all these little pictures, you know. So now your tile and mine are connected for the first time. But out of this, there will be some other pictures that will develop and we'll get glimpses of that. But I'm convinced that there's a God that sees it all finished, you know, right now can see it all finished. And we don't have that, the benefit of that for ourselves. But every once in a while, we get these little glimpses. And sometimes I think it's just things to make us smile, you know. My dad told me about that house, by the way, over on Hartford Drive in Nashville, that when we were laughing about the fact that I hadn't returned there after all these years, that he said, oh, and I'll tell you something else funny too about it. He said, my wedding ring is in that house. He used to take his jewelry and stuff off when he would play sessions. So he looked on the dresser in the back bedroom one night and where's my wedding ring? He couldn't find it. And so he thought, well, I must have dropped it in the studio or something. And he said it was so cheap, I just went and bought another one. And he said he was laying on the bed in the back bedroom one day when a toddler, comes, easing myself into the bedroom and reach up on top of the dresser and grab like a penny off of it. I can't even see it's up there, but I grab it and walk over to the hollow door frame and deposit it in the door latch hole. Hear it hit the floor, bing. And he goes, that's where my wedding ring is.
So it's in did you get the door pulled off? And
no, because Jeff had moved at this point and he got so excited when I was telling him about this.
Yeah.
And in one breath, we were going to go there and take the door frame apart and get that, this lady that had moved in there after he left to let us in and go take the door frame apart. We're going to find your dad's wedding ring, take it back. And he said, never mind. He said, she won't be too happy to see me. And because I think they had weren't buddies or something. So he said it would happen and won't happen all in the same breath. So we just dropped it,
Man, you need to get that ring, man.
It would be interesting.
Yeah, you need to get that ring. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah,
once COVID's over.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool.
It would be. She'll either think I'm crazy or she'll be on my side. You know what I mean?
I think I would be supportive as hell if someone came knocking on my door, once I knew they weren't like, nutty or anything, yeah. And, as long as I'm sure if you tell her, hey, any damage, I'll pay, right. We'll get the guy in and I'll pay for it to restore. Yeah.
Or maybe there's a way to do it with, something running it down who knows? I don't know. There might be some genius out there that can say, oh, there's a TV commercial on right now for a product that'll do just that thing,
YouTube.
Yeah, who knows? But
dude, if you go on YouTube, somebody's done it on YouTube, man. It's amazing when you look.
It's probably, some device with something that's sticky or who knows, but it would be fun if she would let me.
Oh yeah, man.
Now if they would let me do that.
What a story. I mean, I can't believe the thing that blows my mind, and I know what you're talking about with the tiles, but your dad's or your granddad passes away, but 3 days before that, he takes your dad and it changes the course of his life
and mine,
his wife, your life, your family, your children, your brother. I mean, that shit always blows my mind. It really does.
Yeah. And it's things like that. And of course, once again, the older you get and the more of these things you gather in and experience, what it teaches me is at some point to trust that there's something going on, that there's something bigger than us. And there's also better ideas than whatever it is I'm hyper focused on right now.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, whatever you're hyper focused on right now, and you're so sure that it's going to happen and it's supposed to happen. And when it doesn't happen, it can be devastating to you unless you've got the attitude of, well, okay, I wonder what there is.
It's all part of the plan. Yeah, right.
What it is, what's the reason why this didn't happen? I mean, I've had that happen too many times now to ignore it.
It's funny. Well, you mentioned you read my bio and I wasn't a very trusting person, as you saw. And I one day sat down and I started writing down all the things that happened to me that good things that statistically or should never have happened. Mm-hmm. And then I started trusting.
Yeah.
Because I'm
Yeah, one of the worst things we can do is ask for what we deserve. Nobody wants that. If you know the truth, nobody wants that. But so all the good things that we get, to me, are all from grace, and we certainly don't deserve that. If you list all the things that you cited in my bio or whatever, I can't say I worked specifically for those things. I can't say that I dreamed that any of those things would happen. there's something different going on, and it's all from just grace to me.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that. It's higher power, whatever you want, someone wants to call it, but I am a firm, the universe, you know, it's all interwoven. And if I look back at all the negative things I've endured, they've always turned into something so much more positive than the negative as well. So it's pretty cool. Yeah. Thank you, man. I appreciate you sharing that. So if Wikipedia is correct, it said you ran track. I know. Okay,
yeah. At some point, I think I mentioned to you at some point, Wikipedia had me as having written the song Harbor Lights.
And you didn't write that. Oh, for Billy.
The first time somebody said, you have a thing on Wikipedia, and the first time I looked it up, there was about 20% of it that wasn't true. They had said I had written Harbor Lights, which would be quite a feat since it was written before I was born. So that, you know, if I could
that
do
would
that,
be some grace, man.
Yeah. That would be a miracle there.
Well, it said that you ran track, played football and basketball, and you won the regional high jump championship and were voted most athletic student as a senior. Was that all accurate?
That's all true.
How do people know this? Was there ever a conflict between music and sports? Because it's unusual, as you know, for musicians to excel in sports. Usually I'm either a music guy or a sports guy.
Yeah, well, or you're a music guy who wishes he were in sports, or the other way around.
Oh, the other way around. Correct.
Yeah, athlete who wishes he was a singer. Obviously when I was in high school, there was a little bit of a tug of war always, because our high school was Brentwood Academy here in Middle Tennessee, was a very serious about three things on a triangle philosophy. Three equal sides of the triangle were the philosophy of the school, and it was the spiritual base, academics, athletics. And so if you could do something in sports, you did it.
Right.
It wasn't like, do you want to do it? No, it was more like, you're doing that. Right. So, but I was a three sport.
You're a hell of an athlete, man. These are all, you know.
And of course, there were three boys in my family. And so there goes Carter Brown, my 5th and 6th grade football coach again. He's the one that brought our family name up to this brand new school that was starting here in Brentwood, Tennessee. And so all three of us played, you know, football, and me and Brian played basketball. I was on the first state championship football team. My youngest brother, Shelby, was on the second one. But I mean, so there was this little bit of a tug of war, because at our house, you know, we would all kill each other playing, you know, football or whatever, but we'd also go off to our rooms and play our records. Three different genres going on at the same time often. And so, even at school, you know, being focused on whatever sport I was in at the time. But then here comes, when I'm a junior in high school, here comes this guy named Dan Huff, a year behind me, who moves and goes to school with me. Well, of course, I've got a dad at home who's a guitar player, producer, songwriter, the whole thing. But it took this guy named Dan Huff to enter my life to sort of remind me of where maybe it is I should be as a musician, because he was far superior. And so he kept lighting that fire under me and kept making me return to my guitar, bruised hands and all, you know. But I started getting a little more serious about it because of him. So sometimes I think these people that show up in your life on the path that you're on are there to sort of kick your tail. And Dan did that for me as a guitar player. So by the time I got to be a senior in high school, I had a chance to go play either basketball at Southwest Memphis, or go to Belmont and study music business, which is what I chose to do.
Right.
Yeah.
It's another one of those stories, man, where the connection there.
Yeah.
You mentioned your dad. Let's talk about him. Jerry Kennedy, very successful session player in Nashville. He played on Dylan's Blonde on Blonde. He played on records by Elvis Presley, Ringo Starr, and he also played on and produced almost all of Jerry Lee Lewis's country records. What were the most important lessons that you learned from him? Could be music, performance, music business, life, whatever you feel like discussing.
Yeah. I'll mention some other records there. He's the electric guitar on Stand By Your Man, Good Luck Charm, Elvis. And again, Harper Valley PTA with the fretted dobro. His name went on the label with the artist. I've never seen that before. It's Jeannie C. Riley, written by Tom T. Hall, produced by Shelby Singleton, dobro Jerry Kennedy. That was on the 45 label.
That's why I've never seen that.
I've never seen that before either, but I also remember when I was 8 years old, the thing was on the radio, a DJ back announcing the record saying that was Jerry Kennedy on the dobro on Jeannie C. Riley's Harper Valley PTA. So I probably thought for a while that all the players got mentioned, but that was never, that was the exception, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, the things that I saw my dad doing, because of course, all of everything that he was doing made me want to do the same thing. As a player, you know, just when he would play the guitar at home, I would be so drawn to, I mean, this was a man that never told me any stories when I was growing up, but if he picked up a guitar, I wanted to be there watching. And providing opportunities for me as far as instruments, again, having the records, he would put these records in our hands when we were growing up that, like I would say all these years later as a songwriter, thanks to the stuff my dad was bringing home, I would say that Roger Miller is probably sitting up here on this shoulder and the Beatles are on this one.
Right.
Fighting over who has the most influence on whatever it is I'm working on as a songwriter. So not bad bookends to have as early influences, you know. And then again, I would probably have to say that everything my dad did in the music industry, he did with such integrity that it's just a joy for me all these years later to see Don Reed of the Statler Brothers, he was their lead singer. They're retired. Dad did their records for 30 something years, I think. Dedicate his new book to my dad and talk about how much they loved my dad and how much he meant to them in their lives and their career. Just to hear people like that say that about my dad, because they were there with him, you know, they were there with him, maybe spending even more time with him than I was during those years. So the integrity would be a lesson learned from my dad to try to emulate how he, you know, did his thing. And then, you know, just little things. I mean, very few things about the guitar, because it's funny because when I was growing up, I didn't want to bother him about the guitar. For some reason or another, I just was like, I only think I ever asked him one question, guitar related, you know.
Why is that?
I don't know. I think for one thing, there was always this rub when I was growing up between me wanting to do what my dad did, and then of course, looking at the people that he worked with over the years. And then at some point saying to myself, wait, do I really want to do what my dad did? Because I don't know, people will compare. It will always be, I'll be in that shadow, or there's also he got to do that because his dad, you know, the nepotism part.
Yeah,
so there was all these little things that I would say are just gentle rubs in that path that I want to do. I want to do that. And my grandmother, she had a funny story she told me when I was grown, looking back to the summer after my third grade in school. We had moved from Goodlettsville into Nashville. So I changed schools right after Christmas break, and I was at a new school. But at the end of that school year, that summer, we went back to the dead end in Goodlettsville that we had been living. And so I could go see Randy, Rick, Scott, Butch, Mike, Charles, Hal, and Rucker, Betty, all these guys that we would, you know, grew up playing with. And the kid across the street, Scott, his dad's an Eastern Airlines pilot. And I go and visit, and Scott's dad is paying for him to get guitar lessons. What? Wait a minute. You know, I'm supposed to be playing the guitar. And so I'm looking, he's got a guitar, he's got a little amp, you know, and of course it's probably Sears and Roebuck, you know. but it just got all over me that, dang it, I should know how to play the guitar, you know?
Right.
And so I go home and I'm kind of, I guess I'm hanging my head or pouting or something, and my grandmother and my mom are in the kitchen. What's wrong? You know, Scott's daddy's getting him guitar lessons. Well, why don't you get your dad to teach you? He's a guitar picker. My grandmother said, I looked at her and said, he won't teach me. She said, why not? Because he wants to be the best dang guitar picker in the world. So I had just, for some reason or other, it's a stupid little third grader, you know, had decided that he doesn't want me to be good at it, which is crazy.
Yeah.
But I mean, little things like that.
I get the nepotism thing, man. That has got to be torturous in a way, because you want to go forward. You want some leverage. You want an introduction, but then you're thinking about, yeah, but then if it happens because of that's a tough one to reconcile. How did you finally reconcile that?
Well, I think that at the point where I realized, and it was actually after I had finished my season of life in Whiteheart, that Christian band that I was in, and I started doing some sessions, and it was the first time that I got called to do a record for an artist named Susan Ashton, and her producer is Wayne Kirkpatrick. Well, so there were a couple of critical things that happened to me. This is in the early 90s. One was that when Wayne called me to come play on it, he asked me if I had a dobro. And of course, I think he knew about my dad's dobro. Could you come do a dobro part? And could you bring a gut string to do one solo? So I showed up with those two guitars, and then and he was the only one in the studio, just me and him. 2 weeks later, we finished doing all the electric guitars. I brought everything and did all the guitars for the whole record. And so I would say there was this was like a pivotal thing in my life, in that I was finding a music and a setting which was allowing me to be my most natural.
Right.
It found me in my most natural state, what it is most comfortable for me to play. And it was working. It was working for this record. And then, of course, I would end up doing more records with Wayne. And at some point early on, we should write together. So he would be the guy that would sort of shift me into a different, higher gear as far as the songwriting, the craft of songwriting, which was a huge deal in my life. Because up until that point, you know, I wasn't really writing anything that I would want anybody to hear.
But didn't you write most of the stuff for Whiteheart when you were in the band?
I co-wrote songs in Whiteheart. So, yeah. But I mean, that was, again, that's sort of classic rock kind of stuff. So, I mean, I grew up listening to, you know, the Beatles first, but then that, you know, wound its way through Zeppelin and Bachman Turner Overdrive and Rush and all these different, you know, groups I was listening to in the 70s and when I was in school. And so that was sort of like a given. But I mean, what do you do with that in Nashville, Tennessee in the 70s and on into the 80s? Now it would benefit a player to be a classic rock player, because that's more what country is now. But when I've started finding a little bit different styles and things to show up and play, I was finding other strengths maybe that I didn't realize that I had, that I had sort of being prepared for along the way. And then when it got to be my turn, I think maybe what was happening at that point was just a little bit more confident about what I was doing, and there's nobody propping me up, certainly. You know, I think that was a big deal for me was, you know, early on, I'd get called to do a session, and the first thing I would do would be to panic, because I would think, what if I show up and I can't deliver what they want? You know, at some point though, I realized and became more at ease. They're calling me because of what I already do. Because
they want you to deliver exactly what you do. Yeah.
You know, and then try to imagine me in the 90s when Dan Huff's production assistant calls me and leaves a message saying Dan wants to book me to play on.
That's a tough one, man, to play.
And so I'm like, I mean, we're friends all these years, but I'm like, what is he doesn't need me. This must be, you know, somebody's pulling my leg. And that guy called me 2 or 3 times. And finally Dan called me and said, why won't you return the calls? And I said, what do you need me for? I said, you can do. And he goes, no, he said, I want you to do what you do. So there was already something in his mind, something that I do. And so little things like that along the way keep, you know, not making you overconfident, but just the right amount of confident, because you want to still have a little bit of nervousness and be on edge a little bit. Otherwise you don't care enough, you know. But I still get to experience those feelings of when I look to my left and there's Peter Frampton sitting there. And I look and I'll think to myself, okay, wait a minute, what am I doing here? And how did I get here? And does he know that he could get somebody better? You know, I think about that. And it's absolutely true. If I think about any artist I've ever stood on stage with or been in the studio with, they could get a better guitar player. They can get a better guitar player. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind at every turn, they can get a better guitar player. But again, there's something else going on.
And those early jobs with especially, I guess, with that one, with the Wayne producer, when you were asked to do more work and then to write, that must have validated to you, hey, this is, you know, it doesn't matter who your dad is. They're not going to ask you to expand your role here because of your dad or because of anybody else other than you.
Right. I mean,
yeah,
you know, it's rare, but I've been in the studio at times when I would hold up this guitar and say, you know what, my dad used this guitar on. Oh, your dad's a guitar player, you know?
Oh, that's great.
You know, and then I would tell them and they would freak out, you know? And of course I still freak out when I talk about some of those things. It's crazy. But yeah, I mean, at some point I just realized they called me for me and made things go a lot better.
Well, it's funny because I know you know this already. Everybody that's at your level often has, and that plays for, I mean, I had Richard Bennett on here a while ago. You know, he's been with Knopfler. Like,
I love him. Well, he's another guy. He's such a fan of the Hayride music. I've been in his basement, and I think there were over 7,000 maybe vinyl discs from Hayride artists from Louisiana. The Hayride, yeah, he's way into it. But I love him. He's a good man.
Great guy,
talented guy.
But he said the same thing. He goes, you know, Knopfler's calling me, and I'm like,
yeah.
You know, so I think that's just a normal thing. I think everybody who's kind of like humble in general asks themselves that, especially when it's someone that you've looked up to for so many years. It'd be unnatural almost. You know, I mean, like you'd have to be pretty cocky to say, man, about time Peter Frampton called.
Well, no, I would never say that.
No, I know not you, but I'm saying in general, anybody.
Well, I've actually seen somebody not pass the audition because they came in and sucked all the oxygen out of the room. You know, and it had less to do with how they played the instrument or whatever, as much as it did. So there's a lot of that too, that contributes to why there's why this particular group of musicians are in the room at this point working on this record. A lot of it has to do with the pleasure of their company.
Totally. Yeah.
You know? I mean,
hell yeah.
When Jerry McPherson's in the studio with you, at some point you say, this is so much fun, and I'm hurting from laughing, but don't we have a record to make? You know, so sometimes the hang can be so great that you pray to God they're great musicians because this is the person you want to spend all the time with, you know, and that is the case a lot. You know, I see a lot of people that are the best at both of those things.
Jeff King.
Oh, he's another yeah.
He's that guy's great guy, but funny is really funny guy.
He's a practical joker. I hear. Don't do anything to me, Jeff.
Thank you for sharing all that. That was really cool. Once you started writing, right? When did you know that you were either on the right path or that you had something inherent that was working for and with you?
Well, when I was in the group Whiteheart, I wrote for the group. And so we would know, most of the time we would know before we left the writing room, that this will work on the record and on stage and everything, because, the core of the group are sitting there. And so we're not having to think about writing to pitch to some other artist. We're writing for ourselves. And so in that way, I knew how to respond and gear something towards something specific. Where I got hung up for the early years was trying to write songs that somebody would take and just pitch to artists up and down Music Row in Nashville. So the first 6 years I wrote for a publishing company, I had one pop song recorded and one country song recorded, and it was the same song, but two different acts. And then the rest of the stuff I was getting recorded was in contemporary Christian music. That was because I was firmly planted in that as an artist. And so, and I would wind up playing on sessions, that were part of the networking of being in that band. Because there were six guys in the band, and then those would branch out and produce and work with other artists. So they'd come back to us for songs or whatever. And then the last album I did with that band, a guy named Brown Bannister produced it. And at the point where that record was done, three of the rhythm section guys in the band, me and Tommy Sims and Chris McHugh, left to go play sessions. So we wanted to stay in town, start families, and do all this, get off the road. But I was, all this time though, I'm still just sort of got just a toe in the water over here for trying to write songs. And again, it wasn't until I went to go work on those projects with Wayne Kirkpatrick that we should write some songs together. And of course, one of the first things we did when we started writing together was try to get a record deal. And that ended up leading to some amazing things that happened, a lot of frustration along the way. But in that period of time, though, I was learning how to write songs to the point where all these years later, I feel like it's a vein, it's that river that's rushing by. It's always moving. My job is to just jump in,
right,
and not sit here and wait for some of it to just kind of splash over here or whatever. I wouldn't want anybody to hear the first 50 or 70 songs I wrote. But I feel like, in the ensuing years, in the early 90s in particular, literally I've described it before as almost reaching over and turning on a light switch. And from that point forward, I had a handle on, how to write a song, and feel like I know how to do that all these years later.
For you, what were the biggest challenges about writing early on?
Trying to be a guitar player first, because, when I first started doing that, I didn't realize it then, but there's a place for riff after riff after riff after riff that doesn't have a good song wrapped around it, and that's at the booth at the NAMM show. In fact, Jerry McPherson and I, we have a puppet, and we describe it as a puppet named NAMM Chops. Oh, that's great. Those are great NAMM Chops,
Yeah, that's funny, man.
And there's some people that can just astound, and they're demoing the harmonizer or whatever they're doing, and you just stand there with your jaw open, and then you walk away going, man, that's okay, but what would I do with that? Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. So somebody else could figure out something great to do with it. But for me, anyway, at some point early on, I would try to write songs, and it would be riffing on the guitar. Well, I'll just throw a song around this riff and hope that you can tolerate it or like it or whatever.
Right.
So that wasn't the way to go about trying to write a song.
How did you learn that?
Well, that nobody
was buying the songs.
Nobody would record the songs, or even pitch them. But again, some of that was due to the fact that I was writing something outside of the scope of what Nashville was recording.
Sure.
And I was writing it in Nashville. But even good things happened because I was writing at least things that I was driven to write, you know, things that were in me, in my soul, in my heart, even though they didn't see the light of day. The guy who would be in the tape copy room during those 6 years that I was writing my first publishing deal, he would be the first guy to hear the song. And in 99% of the cases, the last to hear the song as he was cutting it into the catalog. There's a guy named Doug Howard. And Doug would jump around the room playing air guitar, doing the Chuck Berry duck walk to my songs, you know.
Right.
And I would think, as I watch this, well, at least he likes my songs.
Right, right.
Nobody else is going to hear him, but at least this guy likes my songs. Well, he left a year before I did. And this was a guy in the tape copy room that had a degree from Belmont, a master's from Vanderbilt. Okay, already. Okay. And you're in the tape copy room. He gets permission to leave and go get his law degree in Washington, D.C. When he comes back, he's not coming back to the tape copy room. The head of Polygram Worldwide, Australian guy named Colin Cornish, had called Doug and said, I want you to come back to Nashville and run the Nashville office.
Okay.
And so this is like a couple of 3 years go by, and I get a call from Doug, who used to be in the tape copy room. What are you doing now? Nothing. He said, well, I want you. He said, I'm coming back to Polygram Nashville to run the office. I'm like, wait, what? And I want you over there because I like what you do. And so I remember going, oh yeah, the Chuck Berry duck walk. So he was the guy who sort of found me at a time when I was sort of floundering and just treading water as a writer, who gave me an opportunity to have another go at it. And so in February of '93, I signed a deal with Doug Howard and Polygram. And the first song I turn into him is Change the World. so, you know, needless to say,
boy, was that a good move on Doug's part.
Yeah. And he's the dean at the School of Music, Business, and Entertainment at Belmont right now. And just one of the most fascinating people and wonderful. He's like a brother to me. But over the years, though, anytime he calls me and says, what are you doing? I go, whatever you want me to do. Whatever.
Absolutely.
I'm doing whatever it is you're about to say is what I'm doing. So just tell me what it is.
Yeah. Wow.
And that's something, that's a unusual.
That is crazy, man.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. But so again, though, go back to the tape copy room. If that didn't happen, if we weren't nice to each other in those days or whatever, if anything changed about the dynamic of that scenario, those two tiles, you know,
totally,
everything
doesn't happen. Change the world doesn't happen.
Right.
And maybe nothing happens. Yeah, man. That's
exactly.
Wow. Holy smokes.
Yeah.
Wow. What a story, man. That is just,
like I said, I've seen too many of those kinds of things happen, and to get to the point of where I actually sort of watch for them now. Looking out of the peripherals, thinking, you know, okay, what's going on and what's happening or what's about to happen and what's happening that I don't even know about.
Yeah.
You start thinking in terms of those things and trusting that it's good. There are good things happening.
I think that's the key, because I have to be honest with you. When I was not a trusting person, a lot less of that stuff happened. Yeah. When I became more open and trusting and saying, you know what, the universe is going to look after me, things started happening.
There's a song on the first Dogs of Peace record that flips a cliche in the other direction. And the song title is, I Will See It When I Believe It. So usually people say,
yeah, man. Yes.
The other way around, you know, what people say, well, look, I'll believe that when I see it, you know. Well, some things I feel like are the other way around.
Yes, man. That's exactly what happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just writing that down because I'm going to go check that song out. Thanks.
Yeah, I think it's the last song on that record. And it's just like, it sounds like somebody waved a green flag in the studio and we just launched into playing just whatever crazy, wild stuff we could play. And it's so much fun, but it's called I Will See It When I Believe It.
On the first record or the second one?
It's on that first record.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You've had so many of your songs recorded by huge artists, and you kind of answered the question, but is songwriting like every other business in that early on in your career, you're getting some local guys to listen, and then you move up, you have a success and you move up, and now they're going to show it to somebody who's real popular up and down the East Coast, and it like scales up. And so I guess like my question is, how does your career as a songwriter scale up?
Yeah. Well, I don't know that I would describe it.
Like, how do you get your song? Sorry to interrupt. How the hell do you get your songs in front of Eric Clapton and Garth and all these people? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's, sometimes it's in a way that a lot of times it's in a way that you could not be the architect of if you tried. And of course we do try. Yeah. We try to do this. We tried to get Change the World recorded. We were going to be the artists first.
Okay.
We were going to, we had a label in New York have us in a developmental stage for a year. They kept saying, we can get you an alternative hit out of this batch of tunes, but go give us a pop hit. Go to the studio, give us a pop hit. Go back to the studio, bring something that's a pop hit. And they would use language like, so we can put another zero behind those numbers and so forth. And so
it's great when someone throws around imaginary money.
But at least you know what he's talking about, right?
Right.
And so we would go back and attempt and come back, and instead of them signing us or saying they weren't going to sign us, they would ask for another 90 days of exclusive developmental, So that went on for a year till we finally, just said maybe we should play this stuff for other people now, but so we've finally sent him, that guy, even 4 months after he had asked for another 90 days. And we said, nah, we want to go play this for other people now. But just for the heck of it, 4 months later, we send him a session with 3 songs. And in that session is Change the World demo. And he finally gives us an answer in April of 92. I'm going to pass. I just don't hear the hit, And so you walk away from that going, well, we failed. Then February of 93 rolls around and I sign with Doug. Their song pluggers start working on that song. And we were told at first that I said, by the way, I said, you'll love this. I said, when I turned the song I said, can you get this to Eric Clapton?
You said that to him.
I said that because
what made you
Tears in Heaven.
Oh, okay.
I thought if he's doing more of an acoustic pop ballad kind of thing, maybe he might like this song. Well, okay, so tuck that away because that's not what happened. The group America put it on hold. And I said, are they making a record? Well, they're trying to get a deal again. So we were kind of like, well, do we want to wait for that? And so the Nashville guys kept pitching the song until producer Tony Brown heard it and put it on hold for Winona Judd. So it goes on hold for her.
Can you, I understand what you mean by that. Can you, for the listeners, if they don't know what that means when you put it on hold?
Okay. Yeah. So the song plugger takes the demo of Change the World to Tony's office, plays it for him. He's going to be producing Winona's next record. He likes the song enough that he wants them to place a hold on the song. They stop pitching it to other people because he has indicated to them that he wants to record it on Winona. So obviously for himself, for the artist's sake and the label, he can't go in and spend the money to record that song if we've secretly let somebody out this door record it and get a jump on it and they get it out. Why'd they spend the money?
Sure.
So they honor these things in Nashville and the songwriting publisher relationship with record labels and producers and A&R people and artists. So the song goes on hold for her. There's a session that's done where she records it. I'm told they want me to come sing the background vocals. Oh, and from the session, by the way, I get a call from my friend Dan Huff. He's playing on it. Goes, hey, we're just cutting your song here. He said, man, it's great. He said, they're saying it's going to be a single. And so I get confirmation from everybody at the label that they're saying this is going to be a single. Well, then Winona, next thing I hear is that she's expecting a baby. Okay. And a baby takes 9 months to come out, but the album took 2.5 years before it comes out. So the album is out, and now we've been standing around looking at our watches and tapping our feet going, okay, we got a single with Wynonna. This is going to be wonderful. You want that as a songwriter. It's a wonderful thing. And so we watched them put out the first single. It's not ours. Oh, well, maybe we're the second single. Nope. Surely the third. Nope.
No.
So I see her producer on Music Row one day, and he says, look, I don't know what to tell you, but her label is saying they're not going to release the song as a single. In fact, her A&R guy said the radio will never play that song. So now we walk away a second time going, we failed.
And this is a long period of time now.
This is in 96.
That's 3 years
96.
after you got that second call.
Well, it's 4 years from doing the demo.
Right. Yep.
Okay. So, but all right. So summer of 96, I'm sitting in the studio with Tommy Sims, and we're playing for a record. Oh gosh, I'll think of her name. We were just playing a session, and he says to me, kind of very casually, GK, he said, listen, we're getting another cut on Change the World. I said, really? Who? He said, Eric Clapton. And I just looked at him maybe for about 2 minutes, just stared at him. And I went, what? Wait, what? So he said, yeah. He says, it's going to be in some movie. I think it's a Tom Hanks movie, but it wasn't Tom Hanks. It was Travolta. And they say it's going to be the single from the soundtrack, and it's happening, and I'm like, I still can't believe it, because I had said, can you get this to Eric Clapton?
You're right.
But again, okay, so I find it takes a while to find out how this all happened. But what happened was Tony Brown, who was going to produce the song on Wynonna, before they recorded the song, had a visit from Kathy Nelson, who works out in Hollywood doing music supervision on films, a lot of Touchstone Pictures, Bruckheimer, blockbuster movies.
All big names.
Yeah, and music supervisor, Kathy Nelson. She visits Tony in his office here in Nashville, and he says, check out this song I am going to record on Wynonna, and plays her the demo. Now, again, if he does not do that, just that one little thing. It's just the one little thing, right? So she goes back to Hollywood, and some months to a year or two, I don't know how much time goes by. I'm thinking a couple of years at least. She starts, trying to play songs and scenes for this movie called Phenomenon. And she gets to the scene where he's been gone, passed away for a year. They're having a little, celebration of life for the guy a year later. And what's that song I heard in Tony's office? So she sets about trying to find the demo of that song, which she does. And she gets it to Robbie Robertson.
Right. Yeah. Oh, man.
He's executive
for the band
soundtrack. And then he calls up, sends a copy to Clapton. Would you do one song for the soundtrack? And Clapton hears it and says, yeah, I'd love to do it. And then he gets Babyface on the phone and says, would you produce a song on Eric Clapton for our soundtrack? Yes. Would you produce a song you didn't write? Like 10 seconds of silence, and goes, yes. And so they made that killer record. But so, okay. And I think I'm kind of going back now to answer your question. Sometimes it takes all of that I just told you to happen once, right, which is a miracle. Just to happen once, it's a miracle. But once that thing happens once, then all of a sudden there's Bonnie Raitt, who was sitting on the front row at the Grammys that night. And I thought she said something to me when I passed her by. I heard this voice say, yeah, Gordon, like that. And I put my hand right in her face, thinking she just said that. And she looked at me like it wasn't, no, it wasn't her. It was Vince Gill sitting behind her.
Oh.
So, but she would call some weeks to months after the Grammys. Hey, would you three guys write a song for me? So that's, and I would,
word spread.
Right. And so, and again, to answer your question, I don't think it's ever the scenario of, well, there's a minor league first, and then there's a AAA, and then there's
right
this, and then you get to the big show and all. I think that you can write that could be the first song you write if you're lucky. I mean, it could be the first song you write. So, but yeah, once the door gets kind of slightly ajar, or somebody's heard your your song and it gets recorded and then it's on the charts or whatever, then all of a sudden there are other people. What else do you have? What else do you have? And then, you know, will you write with this artist? Will you write with this artist? Will you write with this other songwriter that's successful? And so it sort of creates some opportunities, but
Yeah.
you know, there's a long time. But even after you've had success as a songwriter, it never stops, where whatever I would, you know, if I wrote a song today, whatever that is, has the same chances for it as against it.
Yeah.
That any other song I've ever written has had. You know, it can, I mean, I could go and find you songs that are way better than Change the World, probably, no problem, in my catalog. But you know, that may never get heard. I don't know that. I'm just saying that it's all, whatever it is you're doing, even if it's the best in your mind, the best work that you've ever done or whatever, there may never be anything that happens with it. I equate it to the story of Van Gogh, who was over 700 works, and in his lifetime, he actually witnessed one of them get sold.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Oh yeah. And his brother kind of kept floating him money to keep him going. But I've also, you know, this is another thing that I would say to songwriters. I've been to the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam, and they have the works displayed in chronological order around the museum. And, you know, you're looking at the first bunch of paintings on the wall and you're going, that's a Van Gogh. That's a Van Gogh. That looks like dogs playing poker, but that's a Van Gogh. Then there would be a letter from Theo, his brother, an actual letter there, you know, and then another, and then all of a sudden, bam, there it is. And your knees buckle because you're looking at Van Gogh. You're finally seeing what. And so when people say, you know, if you could have lunch or dinner with anybody in history, you know, who would it be? And one of the people I would want to sit down with would be Van Gogh, because I would want to ask him that this last painting on the wall here, that doesn't look anything like what you did after, and then this one that does. And then from there on, it's this, like he's touched, you know, from heaven or something.
Sure.
What happened between those two things? What was it? Did you go, I'm going to quit doing what my publisher.
Right. I mean,
what, you know what I'm saying? I'm going to quit doing what the world says you got to do to make money, and I'm going to do what is me. Or was it some divine intervention? I would like to ask him, what was it, you know?
Yeah, of course.
I would love to know, because I saw it though. I saw it unfold before me on canvas. I saw it happen. So I sort of equate songwriters' lives with that a little bit, in that you can, as a songwriter from the get-go, decide to paint dogs playing poker or Starry Night, either one. They're arguably both have their merit, you know. This one probably sold immediately, dogs playing poker, and hangs in plenty of establishments around the world and was a commercial success from the start. Starry Night, he never saw anything for it in his lifetime.
Amazing.
You know? But look what happens to it later. I mean, so there's a lot of things at play when you are looking at what it is you want to create, you know, as a songwriter, or whatever you do to create, you know, which do you want to do? Do you want to do something that is a safe bet? And that's great. That's great. You'll feed yourself well if you do that, you know. Or do you want to take the chance? And in the case with me, it was years before somebody saw it. It was years.
Okay, so let me flip that on you. Change the World, last song you wrote before Change the World. What happened, if anything?
Not much. I mean, you would go back many songs before you would get to what I would think of as that's me learning. That's me really not learning still, but trying. And then there's a bunch of those songs, you know. For me, again, between the last one of those and the first one of these that you're talking about now was working with Wayne.
Okay.
When I started working with Wayne, and now I was getting some songs recorded. There were good songs. there were some good songs, but I'm talking about where I became a different songwriter.
Yeah.
Was when I started working with Wayne. And I don't know how to describe what happened. All I know is that it was when he and I were writing that I described it before and I'll do it again. It's like I reached over, or somebody reached over and just flipped a switch. And I saw things and imagined things in a different way and had a different discipline, had a different way of arriving to, I think this is good, you know. Maybe I settled a little too early before, I don't know, but.
Yeah, you just don't know.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I'm a big Gilmour fan, and I always say, I don't know how much you're familiar with the Pink Floyd catalog, but there was a song called Echoes on the album Metal. And I always say that's when he became David Gilmour, because everything after, you know, Dark Side of the Moon, you know, all these big, and you see that once in a while and you wonder, like, what was in the coffee, or, you know, like, where did this come from, man? Like, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it's, you know, I got to sit next to Frampton on stage during the acoustic tour and listen to him tell stories in between songs for many, many shows that we did. And one of my favorites was that his father, Owen, taught art and was David Jones's art teacher.
Bowie?
Bowie. Yeah, Bowie. And Bowie was a few years older than Peter. So it was, you know, Peter went and saw them perform for a fundraiser and wanted to be that guy. He tells the story of wanting to be David. Wow. And so then there was this other guy named George Underwood. He said they would all meet once he finally started going to the same school with those guys, they would all meet in the stairwell and play because they liked the echo of the stairwell. And so they were, you know, honing their craft, you know, dreaming about what they wanted to do in the future. Well, Frampton's father taught Bowie art and taught George Underwood boxing. And I remember Peter telling this story one night on stage, and after hearing it several times, it dawned on me, because part of the story was Peter saying he came home from school and he hadn't started going to that school yet. And his father came home from teaching at that school, and mom said, "How was your day, love?" And, well, it wasn't so good today. There was a major row and George Underwood hit David Bowie in the eye.
Oh my God.
And
how
you
funny.
remember David Bowie had two different color eyes?
That's why?
Yes. And so he tells this story on stage one night, and it hits me. Your father gave David Bowie his eye for art and taught George Underwood boxing, who hit him in the other eye. So he gave him the color in the other eye. So his father had a hand in, you know, so what did David Bowie learn at that school? You know, just that one event. It's like, what does it take to make people get on the path they're on, stay on there, or jump off at some point, or carve their own path from the one that's been carved for them, and they forge into this other direction. I mean, it's great to, you know, if you ask 100 people, you would get 100 different answers.
I've had 800 different answers, man.
Yeah.
All the same. It's all some version of this domino hit this one, and your story, you know, and, you know, someone came along and accidentally kicked this domino and it caused this. It's it's some version of that.
Yeah.
Almost all the time.
That's right.
It's rarely, I was real persistent and I kept calling this guy and it's almost never that. That's 2%, maybe.
Yeah. No, I mean, I know better than to think that that's how it happens. I mean, I've got, I wrote 2 songs for a Disney film called Fox and the Hound 2. I wrote those songs.
You don't mess around, man. You're just going.
Well, but I mean, I didn't go knocking on their door. They called me, but they didn't wake up wanting to call me. They called me because somebody else on Disney's record label didn't want to show up for the meeting to discuss the music for the film.
How crazy is that?
So there again, my friend Doug Howard is at the meeting with them. And he says, in light of the fact that this other artist is kind of giving them the, what about no, don't you understand? They're not coming, you know. Well, so Doug says to the people at Disney Animation, you know, would you mind if I called somebody I think you need to meet? So I got to do that because somebody else was a no-show.
Didn't show up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like you got in the band when Dan had to go do.
You know,
yeah.
I will say this, this is how funny life is. And also, it's a great lesson for me. Dan is a world-class guitar player.
Absolutely.
Has never passed an audition that he auditioned for. That's what he told me. I've never auditioned for anything. Everything that I've done, I've backed into it, or Dan called and said, would you sub for me for 3 shows while I go do sessions in LA? And then I quit the band 6 years later, you know? So I didn't mean to do that, but it's like you said there, I've described it as dominoes myself, you know?
It's just phenomenal.
So, and they're all standing up behind you, you know, standing, and you reach back there and pull, and there's a name or an event, place, whatever. And then you realize if you remove that, everything after that changes.
Totally.
And then at some point I realized there's also blank dominoes back there. And that's the one that I pull out, look at it and go, blank, why is there a blank domino? Oh, that's the one that would have said the Mute Brutes of Labor, which was a group that me and Wayne were trying to do with Change the World and all these other songs, get a record deal. And they put out the song Change the World and give the copyright for that song the equivalent of a really nice funeral.
Wow. Yeah. Right.
So it stays blank.
Yeah.
So if it had that on it, then Clapton, maybe that didn't happen, or Winona didn't happen, which, you know, so it's, yeah.
Wow. I always say you can't connect the dots moving forward, man. That's what it comes down to. And you can't see these things ahead of time. Cause I'm like you, I always try to keep, you know, I think I have a high level of awareness, or I try to have a high level of awareness. To never happens, man. You don't see this stuff. It just happens naturally. Yeah. Nothing that you're paying attention to.
Right.
How'd you hook up with Garth?
My brother Brian was hiring him to do demos when he came to Nashville. And he would come, and I understand he would come and watch me and my brothers do this screwball thing that we used to do called Chuck Wagon and Wheels. We were the champions of country and wrestling music. And so we would play and he would come, but Brian was hiring him to do demos. And at the point where I remember him getting his record deal, I remember Brian was the first guy that was making me aware of him. This guy's going to be huge, you know? So Garth, being the loyal, I've never known anybody like this guy. Everybody that was with him from the get-go, he continues to keep with him. So I remember working with Wayne Kirkpatrick in the studio in the 90s. And with those songs that I mentioned to you, we were trying to get a record deal with, giving a cassette to my brother Brian, who gave a cassette to Garth. And Brian called me one day and said, hey, Garth called and wanted you to know he got a speeding ticket in Arkansas listening to the song White Flag on that cassette. I said, tell him I will put that on my resume. But then, okay, so in the ensuing years, I would get a call at some point to come play on a session for Garth, which was very nice of him because he had his core guys that were, he calls them the G-men now.
Chris
Lusinger.
Yeah, I had him.
Yeah.
He's a great guy.
All those guys, but they let me in and sort of like, okay, I was the, I don't know what you would call it, the stowaway or whatever on that session. So I went and played on a couple songs. And then in 1999, I would get a call from Garth saying, hey, would you come and play a session for me? I need to do some guitar overdubs. I said, yeah, of course. And he said, I'm going to put you with this guy that's just moved here from Australia. I think you guys will get along. And I showed up and set up, and basically we had dueling matchless amplifiers and Telecasters, and it was Keith Urban. And so we played this session and got along great, had a blast. And on the way out the door, Garth stopped me before I got to the car. Said, oh, wait, man. He said, I forgot to tell you, I need songs for, and he had done one of my songs on a previous album called Sevens, and a song called You Move Me. So I'd had a cut by him and I'd played on a couple of songs, but now here I am playing and I'm on the way out the door. I need some songs. He said, there's going to be this movie called The Lamb. And he explained this whole concept to me, and I thought it was fascinating. He said, but I'm going to put out the artist that's going to be featured in the movie. I'm going to put out that artist's greatest hits album before the movie comes out. So that launched the Chris Gaines project. So I ended up with 10 songs on that record.
10?
Yeah, 10.
How many were on the record?
13,
12?
13 songs.
Dude, so you got almost the whole shebang there, man.
Well, me and Wayne and Tommy Sims, the three of us were the bulk of all the writing for that record. And
the same three that did Change the World.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me tell you, man, I wouldn't break that team up either.
You know, after Change the World happened, we were going to play it for, you know, cancer, you know, benefit, this thing for the Convention and Visitors Bureau. We started playing. Everybody started calling us, come play Change the World for this and everything. And at some point we said, we ought to write another song together. So we ended up writing 11 total songs as a trio, and 9 of them got recorded. So I've always maintained that the 3 dumbest guys in Nashville are us not writing today, you know, but life.
Great story, man.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, he's got, because Chris has been with him. Like, I think he's played on literally every single record from day one.
Except for the Gaines record.
Yeah, okay.
I think, I mean, there are some songs he hasn't played on, but maybe he's on every album except that. But yeah, that's the core group of musicians. And Garth, he's so great, you know, to keep the team.
Yeah,
he's just like that. I mean, I'm on stage doing these shows with him now, and he's got his original drummer, original keyboard player, and original steel player are still in the band. And then the other guys, all the rookies like me and Blair and Jimmy Mattingly we're rookies because we started in the early 90s. You know, I played on a record in 94 or 5, and Blair did too. And Mattingly started touring with him then. So we're the new guys.
That's amazing. Is Johnny Garcia still with him?
No, he's plays for Trisha Yearwood.
Oh, okay. Right.
Yeah,
okay.
He did do the arena tour.
Yeah.
Previous 3 years before we started the tour last year, the stadium shows.
Right. That's amazing, man.
Yeah.
Jerry Reed, man, how'd you get with Jerry? I mean, he's just such a talent. I mean, personality, player.
Oh, man. Yeah, I miss him. Well, our families kind of came up through the ranks in Nashville. My dad, Jerry Reed, and Ray Stevens at one point were sort of running the Mercury office in Nashville.
Right.
How did they get anything done? I don't know. And Reed was wanting to be a session player. It's funny. He told me at some point when I was working with him in his final years that he had written a song. He decided in 1959 he's going to be a songwriter, and he wrote a song, and it got on the B-side of Brenda Lee's I'm Sorry. So in the days of the 45 vinyl, if you wrote the B-side of whatever, you sold I'm Sorry records. I mean, you had the same number of sales. It's just like Johnny Russell's Act Naturally was the B-side of Yesterday for the Beatles.
Oh, okay.
So he sold Yesterday, you know, numbers. But so Reed had the B-side of I'm Sorry. He said he started going to mailbox and getting mailbox money and said, son, this is what I'm going to do the rest of my life, you know. And he said, I got my next song cut 13 years later. But I mean, other great things were happening for him at that point.
Such a player.
Stopped doing sessions and was, you know, becoming an artist. And, you know, Chet said, you're not a session player, you're an artist. And boy, was he right. You know, that guy, I've lost count the number of guitar players that said, we need a Jerry Reed thing like this. Well, you know what I'm talking about. Well, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But
such a talent, man. And such a great personality, man. When that guy performed, you just felt so good.
Yes. I mean, he was a natural.
Warm. Yeah.
But he always would say to me that he was not as cool, calm, collected as Chet. He said Chet had ice water in his veins. He said, I was always nervous. I'm like, boy, you sure can't tell, you know?
No.
But yeah, Jerry was a freak. And for a guitar player, oh my gosh. He said to me in his, like I said, in the last years of his life, he had a thing called non-essential tremors that affected his hands. It would shake. and he had the doctor tell him he had non-essential tremors, and to which he replied, well, doc, I'm a guitar picker. It's essential to me, you know. And, but he could show you, sort of aim you in a direction that he was talking about if he picked up a guitar, but within seconds, he was really kind of just beating the top, you know, uncontrollably with the right hand. So, yeah, and it was so sad, but his attitude, I choke up thinking about it, because he was in such a good place. The last 10 years of his life, he was going to a Bible study, and that's all he wanted to talk about. I would ask him questions and realize he doesn't care to talk about guitar stuff at all. Jerry, what guitar did you use on Amos Moses? I don't know, son. There's a piece of wood, you know. He didn't care.
You got his pace, you got his cadence down perfectly, man. I
spent enough time with him, you know. But so, okay, the scariest thing anybody ever said to me in the studio was, out of his lips one day, Gordo, son, I need you to put a guitar solo on this song for me. And I'm like, I've got to play the guitar in front of this guy. This is not right. There's so much wrong with this. So I picked up a guitar and kind of fumbled my way through this, you know, trying to do a solo for him. And then when I got done, I looked up at him and he was looking at me, kind of shaking his head, had this serious look on his face. He said, son, he said, you get it honest. You get it honest. And I'm thinking, here comes a really sweet compliment to my father, you know. And then he said, it's like diarrhea. It runs in your genes. So that was life in the studio with Jerry, and we had a blast. I learned a lot from him, not directly as far as him showing me anything, but the first time I ever played in a little group was when I was a freshman in high school. I had gotten an electric guitar for Christmas 2 months before doing the first time I was going to get up on stage and do a talent show. And Jerry Reed's daughter was singing, Sedina. She was singing, and Joey Mascao was playing drums, and he's son of Joe Mascao, who was in the Imperials.
Okay.
So we were like, we jokingly called ourselves Picker's Kids. Picker's Kids.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Picker's Kids. And so, but we did the talent show, but we rehearsed at Jerry's house. And so again, I'm sitting there when he walked into the room while we were rehearsing, and I'm like, no, you know, and he started crying because what you kids are doing, he was so proud, I guess, of the kids, you know, even though he did show me how to do a cool thing on the guitar for the Hey, Good Looking song. He showed me a really cool way to play this chord change. And I know probably when my dad heard me play the song on the show that night, he probably thought, where did you learn that?
Oh, right.
That didn't. So anyway, so he did show me something. And, but yeah, I mean, he was just, I don't know. You know, spent a lot of time in the last years of his life, just going to lunch and doing recording stuff with him. He called me one day and said, I need you to help me sell this bass I found in my stuff. I said, what is it? He said, it's an old Fender Precision. I said, what year is it? He said, well, it's old. I thought, okay, well, he doesn't know how old it is. I said, well, do me a favor, get me the serial number off the back of the neck plate. I'll date it and tell you what it is, and we'll put your bass up for sale. He goes, good. I want to buy a bass boat. I want to buy a bass boat. He wants to go fishing, you know. So I looked it up and I called him. Hey, Jerry, listen, I'm not going to sell your bass. What? Why not? I said, I want to buy it. He said, nice. What? He said, what do you want with a bass? It's a bass. And I said, well, it's a 59 Precision and it's your bass. I said, it probably sounds like God's bass.
Right.
And I was born in November of 59.
Oh, that's always cool, man. Yeah.
Yeah. So he said, no. He said, I want to rip somebody off. I don't want to rip you off. He said, I want to buy a bass boat. And I said, no, just tell me what you want for it. And I said, look, I'll look it up and tell you what they're selling for. And he said, no, he said, no, I can't sell you my bass. He says, I want to rip somebody. And so this went on for about 2 months. And then he called me one day. He said, listen, son, I've been thinking. He said, I owe you money for producing this music on me. I said, no, you don't. I said, labor of love.
Yeah.
You can't pay me. He said, no, I can't let you do that. Listen, would you take that bass? I said, yeah.
That was so cool, man.
So he gave me the bass, and
that's so cool.
So the first time he hired Jimmy Lee Sloas to come play on a song, he writes a check to send to Jimmy Lee in the mail with a note that says, "Thanks for playing bass, B-A-S-E, on my song. And listen, you got to help me get my bass back from Gordon. He stole my bass. He stole my bass, you know." And so he said that became a running joke for a while. And then I got him back one day. We were at Sylvan Park eating lunch, and a friend of mine walked in the door, and I went over there and caught up with him for a second. He said, "Is that Jerry Reed over there?" I said, "Yeah. You want to say hi?" I said, "But do me a favor, you know, when you get there." So he walks up to the table. "Hey, Gordon." I said, "Hey." I said, "Why don't you meet Jerry Reed?" They shake hands. And then my friend says, "Jerry, I heard you got a 59 precision bass." He said, $25,000.
That's awesome.
The look on Reed's face.
That's killer, man.
He didn't know what to do, but I got it back.
Phenomenal.
I stole his bass.
That's great, man.
Yeah.
Now, you said his daughter was singing. Was that the girl that wound up marrying Dave Rowe?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. He had some good, obviously some good Jerry Reed stories when I spoke with him, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's funny, man. Great story.
Mm-hmm.
Any other gigs that or people you've worked with that you want to talk about that you got some nice memories of, or that were just the way you connected was weird? Or
I mean, well, obviously, to me, and I hope these aren't over. I mean, the being on stage with Garth is otherworldly. You know, to be in a stadium,
you're playing
76,000 people, or whatever. They're all turn on phone light on for a song, and then it's like being in outer space doing a spacewalk. It's crazy. I can't even describe it. But I also have to say the same thing about whenever I've sat next to Peter Frampton or been on stage with him doing anything, I can't quit cutting my eyes over there and remembering how I was when I was in high school and the live album was out.
Yeah.
How I had spent an entire year, the entire school year, me and this one other guy, a friend of mine named Mark Vaughn, every time we passed each other, that whole year would go, "Thank you." The whole year. Of course, I subsequently told Frampton, we were riding in a car in Germany, and I said, "Okay, it's been a few years. Maybe it's safe that I can tell you this. I was a nut. I was such a fan." And but sitting next to him on stage particularly when we did these acoustic shows, because it was just the two of us, and I mean, just like I said, in awe of his guitar playing, mixing that with how did I get here, how fortunate I am to call him a dear friend. After we've been knowing each other, working together, and our friendship is now 21 years.
Wow.
And just to be there for his music that I was such a fan of, and to make new music with him it's just on a level that's hard to describe. Same thing with Ricky Skaggs. He invited me on stage to do a couple of songs from the Mosaic record. And this has been maybe not quite 2 years ago now, down in Bossier City. So my family was in the audience.
That's so cool.
So I walk on stage, and we're going to do a couple songs from Mosaic, but I mean, they've just got finished playing tempos that.
Oh, they're blazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I walked up to the mic. He said, "How you doing?" And I said, "Well, I thought I was doing all right." And I looked at the audience. I said, "Have you ever been on the track at the start of the Indy 500 and you look around and you realize you're the only one there on a moped?" That's what I felt like. But to just be on stage, to be in the studio with talent like Ricky, like Peter, to make their records and to play live with them over the years, I count my blessings. And it's, again, if you were to ask me what do I deserve to be doing, or, what am I qualified to do, I would never list these artists in the category of what am I qualified to do. I just don't feel that way. I've never felt that way. Just very fortunate that I get to do that. And
that's why it probably happens, man. People, who, your humility, that people want to be around people like that. You know, who wants to be around, you know, I mean, that's
Oh,
an
yeah, I do.
endearing, but and when it's sincere, which most musicians that are our age, baby boomers that have been in the business that long, it is very sincere.
Well, and I saw that with the session players that were my heroes when I was growing up, and I got to go watch Dad producing or playing on session. Sometimes he was producing, but he'd go out and play also. Those were my heroes
Yeah.
when I was growing up. I wanted to do what my dad was doing. Chip Young, Ray Edenton, Pete Wade, Harold Bradley, all those guys. I wanted to do what they were doing. And of course, when I finally got an opportunity to do it, I was scared out of my mind because I'm there in a situation where I'm going, wait, I really wished for this? Am I ready for this? And in so many ways, when I first started it, I felt like I wasn't ready for this. But you're talking, since you brought it up, the humility and the genuine, just the friendliness and care and love shown to me by these guys in the studio. I was blessed to sit next to Chip Young the first time I ever played in the room with the fellas. Now, this is the guy that played the killer acoustic thing on Dolly's Jolene.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's him. Or that's him doing the electric solo on Billy Swan, I Can Help. So he could do electric, could do acoustic. He's in the Thumb Pickers Hall of Fame, I have no business sitting next to that guy playing guitar.
Right. So
I sit down next to him and I'm thinking, I wouldn't blame him if he just swatted me with his guitar, But what he did on that session, my first session, was he took this big wing and just came over and pulled me right under it. Let me show you how to do this.
That is so cool.
Yeah, here's something you need to know about when you're making your chart. And here's how to keep your strings lasting longer and not changing them so often, I mean, just everything that he could think of, the ropes, quote unquote, whatever they are, he was just willing to start teaching me right then. And I could tell it wasn't somebody paid him to do it. I mean, he genuinely cared about me. And even to the day he died, he was always just the sweetest person to me. I've just been blessed to have been shared with those kinds of people that on that path.
I think this is very unique to Nashville as well. I think it's a special thing. I mean, not that people outside of Nashville are mean, but this is a totally different vibe. There's not as much, at least back in the day, there wasn't as much competitiveness. You had that support and encouragement.
I think you're right. I hear that. Yeah. I hear that over the years about Nashville. So I think that's something to it.
Because I had Reggie Young on the show about 6 months before he passed. And I have heard, see, you're nodding your head. I heard so many stories, the same thing. I walked in, I'm sitting next to Reggie Young, and he came over and he said, "Hey, how you doing?" And he goes,
yeah.
And he, something about his amplifier. He goes, "Well, come on over. I'll show you the settings." And, and same thing.
I mean, there are people that I've met outside of Nashville that have struck me the exact same way. Steve Lukather, when Toto got inducted into the Musicians Hall of Fame, I was in the house band. He walks in the room. The first thing he did was came straight to me and Chris Lusinger, the guitar players.
Yeah.
And it was like hangout time and just friendliest guy. I was like, so nice. So it exists other places, but I hear that about Nashville having that reputation over the years, and kind of proud to have grown up.
Be a part of that. Yeah, man. That's a good thing to be proud of. Mm-hmm. Low points, Gordon. What were some of the low points or dark periods you've had to deal with in life, and how did you get through them?
I don't know about that I would say, well, okay. I would parallel two things happening at the same time. In 1991, I had left Polygram Music, which was my first, 6-year publishing deal that I did, but I left because I thought, I don't think I'm a good fit here. I tried a year in 1991 at MCA Music. That particular year went so horribly wrong at the end of the year. This was the year that me and Wayne were trying to get the record deal. I had the label in New York looking at us. The guy that signed me to my deal from LA quit in October of 91. my deal fell onto the desk of the guy running the Nashville office of this publishing company. He quit in November. So my deal then falls onto the desk of basically a guy that was sort of there kind of pushing the pencils and, you know, knew where all the bodies were buried, I guess, or something, but not really a music person. So anyway, I think I mentioned earlier that we got to the point in December where the guy from the label in New York, and I'm not mentioning any names because I want to say up front that I would never want to have them feel bad for like the guy in New York for turning us down because something better happened. So I think that those kinds of things, whether they were prompted and thought they were doing the right thing, that's them.
That's their stuff. Yeah, man.
That's their stuff. And it worked out for me and wonderfully. But so he said that he, you know, wanted us to give him another 90 days. And we thought, nah. Well, the guy who my deal had come under the guidance of at this point got mad that I said that. He said, "You're not going to sign that extension?" No. And this guy is telling me that because of that, this publishing company was going to deem this as a breach of contract, and I'm going to have to cut them a check for the advance that they had.
Get out of here.
So they wanted me to pay back. He's saying they're going to have to ask me to pay back the money I'd been living on that year, which was a year that me and my wife said goodbye to my mom. She passed away. And then we bought our first house. And then 2 weeks after that, had our first baby. So all in a 2-month period of time, those 3 major things happened. And now this guy's saying, give back the money. So needless to say, I got an attorney and was out of my deal by New Year's Eve. The next song I wrote was Change the World.
There you go. You know? That had to feel so good, man. Well, I didn't know this, but that had to like really feel good.
But it did feel good, you know. It felt great. And then there was another thing that happened during that period of time where that same guy had taken, and I use the word stolen because it's true. He stole a song that was supposed to be half published by me and my brother, Brian, who had the deal, the co-publishing deal with this publishing company on an album. And when the album came out, this same guy had taken and put the whole thing in a catalog, just their catalog, and didn't give us our half. And when asked by my brother, why did the guy do that? He said, sometimes you just have to wear the black hat, he said.
Holy
brother. Okay. So 8 years later, Change the World has happened. All these things have happened. I've got people cutting my songs from Faith Hill to, you know, Garth and all this stuff is happening. There's a change of power with Polygram, who I wrote for in the first 6 years, and MCA that I wrote for in 90. They're going to merge and become one company in 1999 called Universal Music. The worldwide head of Universal Music asked to have a meeting with me. Because my deal was up with the old deal. It was up as this was happening. He said, what do we need to do to keep you here? And I said, well, let me tell you a horror story that happened for the company that you were
right on, man.
So the horror story wasn't to get that guy fired. I want him fired. It wasn't anything like that. It was your company took away my legitimate and honest chance to pay down the debt I incurred that year as a writer and my advance. So I want that
credit.
I want that debt wiped off the table. He goes, done. What else do you want?
Nice.
Now, but if the guy hadn't treated us like that back then, I couldn't have had a leg to stand on to even ask for such a thing. So that dark thing that you're talking about, that was a dark period of time where, and there's a lot of that was me looking up at the sky and going, I thought this was supposed to happen. I prayed about this and I thought this was a thing, you know, and it ended up happening even on a bigger scale a few years later, because like I said, Change the World was supposed to be a single for Winona. And that year that Winona had the record out and we were realizing we're not getting a single, Dogs of Peace had put the record out just because the guy from the label wanted it. And so what happened when he asked us to do the record was, I at first was just sort of answering the bell for a friend. Yeah, I'll do that record. But then when I started writing for it and we started recording it. It's kind of like a funny thing happened on the way to answering the bell for a friend. I got into it, my heart and soul, I poured into it. And I started having this conversation with, I'm looking up, talking to God, and I'm going, you want me to have this platform again and do this message for the young people like I did in Whiteheart 6 years prior? You want me to do this again? Okay, I'll do it. And then when we saw that there was to be no success, kind of the door slammed in our face for that first Dogs of Peace record, then my conversation was back to, I thought you wanted me to do this. I thought you wanted me to share this message again. I don't understand. And then, but now Clapton puts out this Change the World song. In the winter of that year, we find out we're going to the Grammys. We go to the Grammys in February of 97. And I'm thinking, we're not going to win, but I hope Clapton wins. It'd be great if Clapton wins, then he'll think fondly of us, And I've never met him, never talked to him.
Oh, you hadn't the whole time?
No. And they opened the show, he and Babyface by themselves with 2 acoustic guitars, and do Change the World. That's how the Grammys kicked off that year.
Oh my God. I'm seriously, you couldn't have gotten better exposure.
So the first award they give right after that performance for Best Pop Male Vocal Performance, Eric Clapton for Change the World. So we're sitting on the 7th row, and we kind of like, maybe he'll love us, maybe let us come to a show, whatever. And then 45 minutes go by, and now they give Song of the Year. And Gloria Estefan comes out on stage with Tony Rich. They read the nominees. She opens the envelope and says, Song of the Year is Change the World, and gives our names. Well, we make this what felt like a moonwalk up to the podium there at Madison Square Garden. And I remember Clapton sitting 10 feet in front of me, and he's, looking right at us. But I walk up to the mic because Wayne sticks his elbow in my ribs, and Wayne's kind of shy. I love that about him. He gets all his talking done in a song, But he, on stage in front of the world, boom, are you going to talk? He said. And so I walk up to the mic with nothing prepared because we thought, we're not winning this. Nashville, this was the 39th annual Grammy Awards, and once before us, it had come from Nashville.
Wow.
Only once. Songwriting, this is a great bed of songwriters in Nashville, the greatest community around, And so I walk up to the mic, and the first thing out of my mouth was, I said, first of all, my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, he is strong, weak in no way. And then I made my thank yous. And then I remember going back to my hotel room that night, and people have been calling from Nashville. I still don't know how they found out where I was staying, unless they called my wife's parents who were watching our babies and gave them the number of the hotel up there. So, but I was getting calls till midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. And everybody that called was saying kind of the same thing. Man, that thing you said. Nobody says that. They usually say something else. They usually say, thank God, or what, but nobody says that thing you said. And I remember I heard this for a while. I put the phone down, and finally, 2 or 3 in the morning, was able to put my head on the pillow and make an attempt to go to sleep. And then I raised straight back up. And I looked back up again. I said, oh, you did want me to share this message again.
Yeah.
You did want me to do this again, only it didn't look like how I thought it was going to look. How many years would I had to have gotten on a gospel bus and ridden around to be able to say what I said in 10 seconds to 1.5 billion people around the globe? And so, that's the how I came out of anything dark during that period. I wished my mom had been there to see all this.
Sure.
She missed her first grandchild by 2 months. And
Sorry.
so, and all of us go through that. All of us go through those things. But there's a big picture thing happening. And I want to be a part of that. I want to know what it is I can do to be a small part of that.
Right.
It's a big thing, but we're all part of that. That was a lesson that I learned from that.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, you know, I've learned that when things go south to just say to myself, okay, that means I got to go on a different adventure.
Yeah.
Because
and you may find out in this life, maybe you'll find out in the next, but you'll find out at some point why you didn't get what you wanted or why that happened instead of this other option. And you'll find out.
And it's less stressful when you're looking at, you know, a buddy of mine said, he said, don't be part of the results committee. And I really like that because it takes all the pressure off. You know, I'm going to do the work and I'm not, you know, the results are not up to me. I'll leave it up to the universe, to God, whatever. And then I'm good with whatever happens. And if it's positive, go, you know, you figure out afterwards.
Well, that's songwriting in a nutshell right there. What you just said.
Do the work and then put it out there, man.
Yeah. Because you can't write a song and then go chalk up sales.
Right.
I mean, how many times are you willing to buy the song to say you sold that many songs, you know?
Right.
You can't really do that. And, but yeah, that's it. You have to do your part and then it's out of your hands at some point. Thankfully, in a lot of ways, it's out of your hands.
Musically, is there anything you haven't done that you'd like to? Haven't done yet. Sorry.
Well, you know, I've kind of had a desire for a number of years now to maybe do like an underscoring for a film, if that would be the term that would be best to use, or just be somebody, you know, have somebody hand over the songs needed for a film and do all the music for a film or something. We're on the verge of maybe seeing something like that happen. I've gotten a script and a book, and they pulled me and Ricky Skaggs in to be.
That's cool.
So it could be that we wind up doing the entire soundtrack for, other than like scored orchestral music or something, but all the songs for a film. I kind of am interested in doing that kind of thing. There's probably still tons of people that I would love to. Oh, if somebody said, "Hey, McCartney wants to do something with you," I would go, "Okay."
Yeah, right on, man.
That would be a dream come true. I met him, and but to get to work with somebody like that, that would be amazing. But I mean, my gosh, I've that was one thing about, growing up thinking, do I really want to do what my dad did? Because at some point on the front end of this precipice, to me, I'm looking at the list of people he's worked with, and it's Elvis, Orbison, Dylan, Ringo, and on and on and on. I'm thinking, right now, I have played a talent show at my high school. I've and then at some point, those little things would happen, and then in recent years, I look back over my shoulder and I go, there's Garth and Frampton and Skaggs and Clapton and Bonnie, and just, I'm very blessed, I've been able to be a part of their music.
Did you ever get to sit with Clapton finally?
Just met him at an after party and then spoke to him on the phone at some point, which was amazing. I mean, when he got up for the first award at the Grammys that night, he thanked one of the three writers. And we found out later that the one of the three writers that had a publishing presence in Los Angeles had, that particular publisher had kept saying just his writer's name, his writer's name, his writer's name. And then when Clapton saw us get up on stage, all three of us, I could see him right there in the front row looking like, wait,
Oh, he had no clue.
No, he didn't. He showed up to do the song for a soundtrack. He did his thing and then he went away. I'm sure didn't have anything more than that invested into it. So it surprised him to see three people get up on stage. So he doesn't go to parties. And we're also have been told not too long after that there really isn't any such thing as a backstage pass for one of his shows, because we'd like to go say hi to him. We bought tickets. Can we go say hi to him? There are no backstage passes. In fact, the management told us first time he came through Nashville after the Grammys, and we thought he'll let us come say hi to him, So we reached out through the record company to the management, and the message we got back was, he's aware that you'll be in the building. And so
That's like such.
but I'm thinking he doesn't know. They didn't
BS,
tell
man.
him.
Yeah.
They didn't tell him nothing. So they keep him in a bubble, right? Anyway, but at an after party, we went to 2 after parties, and the first one we went to was the Warner Reprise, which was the label that put the album out. They invited us, so there we were with our wives, making a little plate of finger food or whatever. And Wayne and I are chatting, and it was like, it's a shame we're not going to get to meet Eric Clapton. Yeah, he doesn't go to things like this, I bet. And I turned and I took a bite of food, and these 2 hands hit my shoulders. Clapton.
Holy smoke.
So he was right in my face, and he goes, I am so sorry. And
that was really cool.
Yeah. That he came to find us. And
that was
yeah. So we talked to him for 5 or 10 minutes, made pictures with him, and then he left like Batman. He was gone.
Yeah. Well, that speaks a lot to his humility, though. Was that important? I mean, that's a pretty cool. I mean, as a person, that's a pretty cool dude.
I think that's why he showed up.
Yeah.
But so let's see. 6 years after that, I am taking my son to drop him off at grade school, and I get a call from Simon Climie, Eric Clapton's producer, who by this point I had written with Simon, and had gone up to Coldwater in New York to visit and work with Simon, and we wrote a couple songs. But there's a song that I wrote with Wayne and Kelly Preston. And Kelly was like buddies with Winona and Whitney Houston, but I've worked with her through Winona.
And that's John Travolta's wife, correct?
No. Am I saying this wrong? What is her name? She's unbelievable.
Kelly Clarkson?
No, it's not her. Kelly Price. Kelly Price. My bad.
Okay. No, it's all good.
Yeah, I'm going back to the Travolta thing. No, Kelly Price. She's friends with Winona, and Whitney Houston was a buddy of hers as well. She came and sang the demo of this song called Take My Love With You that we wrote with Wayne. And somehow she got it into the hands of Simon Climie. So here he is calling me. I'm taking my son to grade school, and hello, Gordon. He said, can you, I'm in the studio at the moment with Eric, and we're recording your song, Take My Love With You, and was wondering if you could send us your guitar tracks from your demo. And I'm thinking in my head, because like I mentioned before, I'm not the engineer and the tech
guy.
No, I'm thinking I've got to, assemble a staff of guys with white lab coats on and try to see. I said, well, I can probably get it to you in a couple of hours. But the real reason behind that was I was actually leaving after dropping my son off. I was with my brother Brian in the car going over to the Jerry Reed Bible study.
There you go.
So I said, I can address this in like a couple of hours. Oh, well, no, he said, we're actually recording it right now. So we'll press on. But if you get a chance, go ahead and send us your guitar track. So I hung up the phone, and now I'm driving and it's going through my mind, how am I going to get this done? And then all of a sudden I thought, wait, I could tell you exactly, I could be your seeing ear dog for where to put your fingers for every chord and nuance of the guitar tracks and how I played them. So I called him back when I got to the house where we were having our meeting, and I said, Simon, I can tell you over the phone exactly what I'm doing. And he goes, oh, well, wait, let me put Andy Fairweather Low on the phone. So this nice, really super nice guy, at right-hand man to Eric, guitar player, great guitar player, he gets on the phone and says, so after about 10 minutes, I'm telling him where I'm letting open strings ring, what inversion of that chord, and all this stuff. And he goes, well, I said, I think that's it. He goes, yeah, I believe we've got it. I believe we've got it. Because that's what he's trying to do it as I'm telling him. He said, I think that's what I'm hearing. Well, listen, Eric wants to say hello. So now I'm like, humming, hello, Gordon, I said, hey, before you say anything, let me thank you again for what you did for us 6 years ago. Oh, that's very sweet, very kind. Listen, are you using a pick or your fingers? I mean, it's like he wanted nothing to do with the small talk and the thank you and all that. It was, yeah. They're sweet. Are you using a pick or your fingers?
That's great, man.
And I said, yeah, okay, I think I'm using my fingers. He goes, that's what I thought. Well, he said, we're going to give it a go. And I'm not sure we'll get it as cool as your demo, he said. I said, oh, I think you will.
Yeah, I think between you and Andy Fairweather Low, you might get it knocked out between the two of you. Yeah.
Yeah. And he said, well, God bless. And then we hung up the phone. And of course, that song is still in the can for him. And Bonnie ended up recording it a year or so after and putting it out as a single. That was our third single with her.
When somebody puts something, congratulations, that's awesome. 3 singles with Bonnie Raitt.
Well, 4 out of her last 5 singles
were yours.
Are ours until she does another album. I've got her most recent single, even though it's 2 years ago.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah. She's amazing.
Oh, she's incredible, man. What a ball of energy, man. At least I've not met her.
Oh, she's a rock star.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't kid yourself. Go see her live, man. And a sweetheart of a person too. Just love her.
When somebody puts a song on hold, right? I'm assuming they have to pay in some, like a deposit or something. No. So it's just a friendly.
In Nashville, it's like truly is like an honor system.
Okay.
I have heard of people abusing the system to the point of where somebody did do exactly what you just described, where the umpteenth time this producer called and said, hey, I want to put that song on hold. And this publisher had been burned several times. Because what happens is, and I've been in the room with other writers when they say, hey, you know, have you got anything going on, you know, any activity? And I remember saying, or somebody telling me, they said, I can't remember if it was me or somebody else said, yeah, I've got a song on hold for Faith Hill's new album. Oh, I do too. There were 40 something songs on hold for the record. So meaning that, you know, 3/4 of those are going to get burned.
If you're lucky, only 3/4. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
definitely.
So this one publisher in Nashville, a friend of mine, he got tired of having that happen to him and did what you said. He said, I'll put the song on hold if you cut me a check for, I think it was like $15,000. He said, I'll put the check in the drawer here. And when you cut the song, I'll tear the check up. And then the guy wrote the check and cut the song. So that's the only thing I've ever heard of like that. Where
that makes sense to me. Because if you have no skin in the game, it's like, oh yeah, we got that on hold. We don't need to pay attention to it. We're still looking for other songs. But putting it on hold puts you and the publishing company financially on hold. You can't shop it. I mean, that's not cool.
One of the other things that happens is if I've got 40 or 50 songs on hold, some of those songs could be hits for other artists, but I've got them all on hold and I let one of them go and it becomes a hit. Now I'm part of this story of I had that song on hold and didn't record it. So we need to keep it on hold for a year and hopefully everybody dies a slow death so we don't have that scenario. I mean, sometimes those are rare things that happen, especially in this town, but I have heard of, things like that before. My favorite publisher being strong-armed or attempted to be strong-armed story was years and years ago, probably in the 70s, publisher Bob Beckham, Combine Music, had a song that was going on a Dr. Hook record. Dr. Hook's manager.
Dr. Hook and the Medicine Gap or something like that.
Medicine Show.
Medicine Show, yeah.
I think and he called the manager for the group, called Bob in his office and said, I got good news and bad news. And Bob said, well, okay, what's the good news? He said, well, the good news is Dr. Hook just cut your song. And it is a stone smash, he said. Well, what's the bad news? He said, well, the bad news is we got to have half the publishing or we're going to burn the master. And so Bob Beckham, I'm told, sent a runner over to the studio where they were recording to walk up to the manager and hand him a match.
Oh, right on. Like, go ahead, burn it, man.
Burn it. Burn it. Yeah. Good. So, because you shouldn't be doing that.
That's disgusting, man. That's like,
again, rare, very rare. stories like that. I've had stories like that, you know, where we've been asked, Wayne and I were asked to write with Jessica Simpson. And, you know, it's all with the carrot floated in front of us that you're going to have a song on her next album, which doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. She's got her name on a song that Wayne and I wrote. She didn't write any part of it. But because of the way her and her manager set this scenario up to where there's 2 writers in that room, 2 in that room, 2 in that room, and 2 in that room. And they're all writing songs for this project, you know, whatever it's going to be, if it's even going to be. And they, you know, they do this over the enough time that she ends up having an instant catalog of about 12 songs in a matter of a day or 2. But Wayne and I are in this room by ourselves writing for 4.5 hours before she sticks her head in to go, basically, what have I written so far, you know? And so we play her this song, they like it, but nothing happens. So Lori Morgan ends up recording the song, but we have to put Jessica Simpson's name on it just for throwing the party that day. And, you know, somebody asked me years later, what was it like writing with Jessica Simpson? I said, it was exactly like writing with Wayne Kirkpatrick. Exactly.
Why does she put her name on it? I'm lost on that.
It's sort of a ruse that management uses the artist's name and the popularity that they are enjoying at that moment to try to entice writers to play that game, you know.
But they're allowed to steal your music?
It's like you are here writing with her, even though she's not with you. It happens a lot of, in pop music, that happens a lot, you know.
But why wouldn't you get co-writing credits on it with her?
No. We got our writing credits.
Oh, you did, but she stuck her name in there.
Got her name on a song that the 2 of us wrote, is what I'm saying.
So she's taking 1/3 of the proceeds or whatever. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, for coming by and being nice enough to stick her head in with her manager and listen to what we had written. She got 1/3 of the song. So, yeah, just, you know, that was one of those things where you go, I'm not doing that anymore.
Yeah, that's terrible, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. No, I understand the guy with the match, because I would have been like, have at it, man. You know?
Yeah. You know, the only way, I've had people say that to me, we need, you know, the publishing, or we need, you know, really the only way for you to get a piece of the publishing for a song I wrote is to be my publisher. You can't just say or demand it or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are people out there that try to do that stuff, and that goes back decades.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Wow, that's sad. Guitar wise, Gordon, what's your go-to guitar right now? And what other 2 guitars would round out your top?
Oh, well, I mean, sheesh. You know, over the years of doing session work, there was most of the years I was doing session work, I was using my dad's 335, which is a 61 dot neck ES 335 that he used on Pretty Woman and all those records we talked about.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. It's a great guitar, and it's got these wild benders on it that a guy named Dean Porter taught my dad, and also Grady Martin, who had a semi-hollow body Gibson, into taking the Bigsby's off of their guitars. I can put pedals on there that'll emulate steel guitar, pedal steel. So Dad let this guy pull the Bigsby off of it in the early 60s and put a palm lever that raises the B up a whole step, and then the elbow thing sits on it's a chrome piece. It's round. It's actually the drain stop in a sink or a bathtub. That's what the guy used. But you set your elbow on it and take the high E string, goes down a whole step by depressing it that way. So I don't use the elbow thing over the years, but I have worn out that B bender on a bunch of records using it on for that guitar. But that guitar is one that I've used consistently since the late 80s, when my dad just kind of turned the keys over to it for me to use. And then a Telecaster. I mean, my first guitar was a Telecaster. I used it. Huh?
Do you still have that?
Oh yeah, it's on its 3rd finish.
That's cool, man. Not many people have their first guitar. Yeah,
I still have
very small percentage.
I wish I hadn't. Like I said, I refinished it twice, but it went with me everywhere I drug it, you know. But I also have since then bought a vintage one that is just phenomenal. It's a 61 Telecaster. So those two guitars, and then, you know, a Les Paul and a Stratocaster would sort of be things that I gravitate toward. Well, those are the four main food groups anyway, aren't they? So
yeah, I like how you put that. Yes, those are the four main food.
Yeah.
What is that thing called? I'm going to look that up. I never heard of it.
Well, I tell you what, you can look up, and your listeners can look up, viewers, the Jerry Kennedy Pretty Woman ES 335.
Great.
From the custom shop at Gibson. We did replicas. Actually, I did replicas of two guitars I own. Well, I own my dad's guitar was one that we did, but the first one I did was a 1959 Les Paul Standard that John Sebastian had and used on all the Love and Spoonful records.
Oh, he's a talented guy, man.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Super talented, great songwriter, man.
And when I was a kid, I loved their music, and so I have that guitar all these years later. But so along with Gibson, we did a replica in the Collector's Choice series of guitars. Are you familiar with that program?
No. What is that?
They replicated existing guitars, and for the most part, they were all bursts, Les Pauls. You know, the first one was the Peter Green Les Paul. And then there were some in there. I think Joe Perry, Joe Walsh, Bernie Martin.
Greg's got one. Greg Martin's got one.
Yeah, his was might have been number 15.
Yeah, I know he's got
Mine
one.
is number 13. So I can't remember what number his is, but he bought one of mine. He bought one of the Sebastian replica. Yeah, he bought one of the Spoonful bursts because he said that's the guitar he saw live with John Sebastian playing that made him want to get one.
That's right. He told that story on the air. That's right.
So we did a run of those guitars called Collector's Choice. It's number 13 in the series. And of course, I got the prototype for that. And I'm just blown away at what they're able to do when they set their minds to it, to create a guitar that sort of draws way closer to a vintage guitar than anything I've played before it. You know, it's phenomenal what they were able to achieve with the Collector's Choice series. And then we did my dad's 335, and I think I sold 13 of the 23 that they made.
That's pretty good, man.
Well, people I know closely wanted them.
Yeah.
Frampton won and one, Skaggs won and one, and my friend Wayne Kirkpatrick won and one because he has produced songs where the original has appeared, you know.
Oh, that's great. That's very cool.
Peter played the original on that record for me and Ricky Skaggs, the album called Mosaic. There's a song on there called My Cup Runneth Over, and he played my dad's guitar on the solo on that song for us. So it's, you know, and when they did the replicas, all these people were like, sign me up, I want one. So we did just a short run of those because they're a little more of a specialty interest guitar.
Sure.
With those levers on them. But so those are, I mean, I would use those four guitars. It's a 59 Stratocaster hardtail, the 61 Tele, the 61 335, and the 59 Les Paul would be the main guitars.
Those are awesome guitars.
They are awesome guitars.
Every one of those that you got, man.
Awesome.
You're not suffering fools with those guitars, man. I'll tell you right now.
They are awesome.
Do you have a favorite song that you've written, and why?
Well, I don't know. I would just say the entire project called Mosaic that I did with Skaggs 10 years ago. If you were to listen from that song, from that album, from the first song all the way through to the end, it's a journey, and it very much, Craig, will indicate me, just spiritually.
Yeah.
Everything on that record is so real to me. And, you know, I've said this to people recently about that particular record. I said, you know, most of the time as a songwriter, you feel like songs come from somewhere through you and to listeners. But I've noticed over the years that we did that record, even when we were doing it, but even listening to it after not hearing it for half a year or a year, and then queuing it back up for some reason or another, and then just being completely bowled over by emotion, listening to something and realizing that there's a bunch of songs on that record where those songs came to me, and instead of going through, they just got stuck And so I realized I was to be the hearer, the listener of this particular message. And to this day, still feel like that with a few of the songs on that album. These came to me because I needed to hear these.
Right.
It's almost like saying I hope to write a book on my father someday so I can read it. You know, it's a little.
Yeah. No, I understand exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. But
because that would be like a cathartic thing for you to do.
It surely was. And
yeah.
Yes. So I would, say, listen to that album, the whole thing. And then, there's other songs that have been really good to me, and
right.
And all of them, it's hard to pick a favorite song. That would be tough for me. Then it might be different if you asked me tomorrow if I said something today,
Absolutely. I totally get that, man.
Yeah.
Give me your top 3 Desert Island discs. Again, just for right now, just for this minute.
Well, I think the one that always stays near the top of if I did like top 10 lists or whatever, would be the Abbey Road album by the Beatles. Cause I mean, Dad brought me Meet the Beatles. And then I was 7 at my grandmother's for Christmas when Sgt. Pepper came out. That blew my mind. I sat there and stared at the console at my grandmother's house for a week listening to that record. I mean, I didn't want to do anything else. But when the Abbey Road album came out, I think I probably wore that thing out, logged more hours listening to that album than any other album I've ever owned. So that would be one. Gosh, there's certain songwriter records that I like to listen to. Any solo record by Knopfler.
Yeah. He's such a great songwriter, man.
Well, yeah. And so anything just to keep reminding me of what it means to try to pursue writing such, on that level. So any one of his solo records, and the Mosaic record, again, because it's so personal to me. I think what I've heard other people say when they've listened to it is unlike anything I've ever heard people say about any other records, period. Just, I wouldn't call them the reviews on the record, but I would just say what I've heard from people coming back, and to know that I've experienced the same thing they're talking about, listening to that record. So I'm taking that.
That's cool.
Yeah.
My favorite Knopfler song is Telegraph Road. And I started doing some research because even how he he's a pretty stoic guy.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know him, but he seems like he's not big, like emotional sort of dude. But I watched, it's on YouTube. He did this show in Spain. If you look up Telegraph Road, Sevilla, Spain. And at the end of it, he was putting out his hands like that was like a lot of emotion for him.
It was moving him. He was soaring.
Yeah. And that's just how the record makes you feel. And so I looked into the lyrics, and it's just a really good story how he came up with that song.
Yeah.
It was
he's phenomenal. I've met him twice, and I've got all the records, I mean, if I were he would be one of those where you would say, take somebody's entire catalog with you traveling. That would be somebody that would be a no-brainer for me.
Yeah. Glenn Worf was here on the show, and I asked him, I said, this is exactly like your stories. This is all the stories I heard. How the hell did you get hooked up with Mark? He goes, well, I was playing a gig in Exit. What's that called?
Exit In?
I think it was at the Exit In or something, it wasn't Madison Square Garden.
No, Exit In is in Nashville.
Right. It was
Exit In.
It was an Exit In or some club like Exit In. And he goes, and I got off my set and I'm walking to the restroom and I go past the bar and Mark Knopfler is there. And he said hello to me. And I was like, oh my God. And they talked, they had some chit chat. And 2.5 years later, he gets a call from management. They go, hey, Mark Knopfler would like you to play on his record. It's like,
yeah. Well, I've been in the studio with Glenn. He's so great.
Yeah. 2.5 years, but it's just amazing.
Yeah.
All right. Tell me a few things or one or two things you've done, Gordon, that or things you've done or changes you've made that have had the biggest impact on your life? Could be like professionally, personal growth wise, musically, spiritually, anything, any change that you made that impacted you?
Man, that's a great question.
Thanks.
I mean, I mentioned the one thing about finding the right collaborator to sort of shift my approach in writing songs. That's a really good question.
It's a brand new question, man. This is
it's
first time I'm asking somebody.
I mean, because a lot of times when you're heading down, a lot of times you set a bullseye in front of you and you think you're supposed to hit that. I've shared this message and I've heard it too, but I've also added to it. Somebody may have described once about painting that bullseye and taking the arrow and trying to hit it and missing and going over to where the arrow landed and just paint the bullseye around that, which it can sound like, well, on one hand, that's cheating and it's lazy. But at the same time, though, for me, it's like, no, I've seen that because the component that I would put in there would be more the equation for me would be, that of course the arrow that's on your back in the quiver there is the thing that represents your skill set, what you're good at, what your gifts are, and what you're aiming for has to be something. I mean, you have to be aiming for something, but when, and in my case, many times I've thought it's going to hit that. I know it's going to hit that. And then it goes, way over here, and let God paint the bullseye around that and show you at some point why it landed over there. So it's not necessarily always consciously making a change about what direction I'm heading or whatever, as much as it is accepting a change that happens, right, that you weren't planning or weren't, that wasn't the plan. I didn't know. I mean, that, I had this other thing in mind. So it's just accepting these things that happen. And again, trusting that, and it may take you 4 years or longer, or it may take minutes, to find out, oh, this is what was intended instead. And this was so much better than what I had in mind. Oh, this is way better,
Right.
And that happens a lot. So it's just accepting that.
Reminds you of that movie. You ever see that movie Slumdog Millionaire?
Mm-hmm.
That whole movie was about that, man, and it was just such a triumph for that kid,
Yeah.
This is a tough question. What do you like most about yourself?
Yeah, that is a tough one. I would probably in a general way say that I'm comfortable in my skin. Really, that's kind of it. Because I wouldn't point to a category of behavior or a talent. Here's a trick I can do that. I'm comfortable in my own skin. That's probably the only way I can think of to answer that.
Fair enough, man. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Happiest moment in your life?
There's a ton of those, I'm sure. So many things that bring joy over the years. A lot of what we've been talking about is that serendipitous moment and how things you weren't looking for or planning on happened, and it was so much better than anything you could ever dream of. Those create the moments that are just take your breath away kinds of things. To look back, even on how I met my wife,
How did you meet her, man?
I was traveling.
Gotta tell the story.
I was traveling around with the Whiteheart group and making no money. I was making no money. And when people say, you're in a Christian rock band, tell the truth. Were you just doing that for the money? And I'm like, no. And I can tell you how I prove it. I was not making any money. I mean, my tax lady would look up and see me coming through the door and just kind of snicker, every year. But anyway, so I'm out there because I believe this is, you know, what I was called to do and where I was supposed to be at that time in my life. I really believed it. And I saw the fruit of what I was doing and what we were experiencing with people that would come and hear the music. And plus I met Tommy Sims because he joined the group after I'd been in it for a year or so. He joined the group, and Chris McHugh, and we would go on to do all kinds of things in the years after.
Tommy was one of your co-writers on Change the World.
Yeah. So that, again, if I wasn't in Whiteheart.
Yeah.
But anyway,
so Change the World. Yeah.
On Halloween night, 1986, we find ourselves in South Bend, Indiana. Now, you have to believe me when I say to you that any girls that came to our shows that wanted to talk to us, we would always meet people to sign posters and stuff at the table, record tables or whatever, out in the lobby as soon as we'd finished playing. That was our time with them, and then we were gone. And so anybody that said, hey, if we come to Nashville, can we play tennis? No, I mean, that never happened. And I never met anybody traveling on the road that I thought I should keep any kind of a relationship with anyway, or even get to know, other than that 1 hour, or it's really minutes with that person at the record tables or whatever. It just never happened. But I'm playing on stage in South Bend, Indiana, and there's this girl that is sitting right in front of me on my side of the stage on the front row. And of course I notice her, beautiful girl. But we do our show, and we're up there singing songs about Christian faith, you know. So you're not going to be handing phone numbers out and doing all this stuff. But so after that show is over, we go do our stuff at the record tables and everything. And then the lead singer's from South Bend, the guy from our group, Rick Florian, his family's throwing a little banquet up the road in a banquet room at the Marriott. So we go there. They've got a cake. I think in my mind, I'm seeing a cake that they've put the icing on the cake with the likenesses of the 6 guys in the band and a little buffet of food. And I go and sit down, and at the table right next to me is the girl.
No way.
So I meet her and her 2 sisters and mom and dad at this little get together. And for the first time in my life, after talking to her and her family, they go to leave. And as she's leaving, I remember thinking, ouch, you know, like, but then I'm being a good boy and I just go, okay,
right.
I go get on the bus. And then David Martin, who was opening for us. And again, if there's no David Martin, Domino, he comes up on the bus and he's grinning like a mule, you know. He looks at me and I go, what? He goes, you need to marry that girl. And I said, yeah. And he goes, no, I'm serious. You need to marry that girl. And so I looked at the lead singer. I said, what do you know about her? He said, well, I think her family goes to church with my brother. And, you know, this was Halloween in '86. So I called her around Thanksgiving. And then I saw her again right after Christmas that year. And we got engaged the next spring and got married in September of 87.
87.
So yeah, we just had our 33rd anniversary.
Congratulations, man.
Yeah,
that's a
thanks.
really cool story.
But yeah, I mean, but you talk about the happiest day of my life is today because I'm still married to her. And the happiest day of my life will be tomorrow.
Right on, man.
That's the gift that keeps on giving. But I mean, yeah, there's, you know, having our children, those kinds of moments. Those are, you know, little miracle moments and things like that. Yeah, those are the sweetest.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
You have any hobbies outside of music?
Really nothing to speak of. I kind of always laugh when people, when we get to talking about it, because some days I'm at my hobby, which is music.
Right.
And then other days I'm at work, which is my hobby. You know, it's the same thing. So, and they both bring the same amount of pleasure and gratification. You know, I can't go a day without, you know, touching a guitar and then if I pick up a guitar, most of the time I'm looking for something to put down an idea just because I thought to play the guitar, and I'll have these little flashes and nuggets of ideas. So I'm always looking for something quick to get a hold of to record. And, but I mean, I still like sports and try to do, you know, be active and go and do things, but I really don't have any hobbies like, you know, what people would call hobbies.
Are you forgiving with yourself? Like if you pick up the guitar and like nothing happens, or are you like, man, I've got to put something down even if it's garbage?
You know, I've not ever had what the people would use the phrase writer's block or whatever. I don't, I mean, there are days when you don't write anything and there's nothing pouring out of you, but I've never encountered a situation, and maybe it's because I'm not a 9-to-5 writer in the first place and do that every single day for year after year after year after year. I've never had a you know, a moment where I've needed to write something and didn't or couldn't. I sort of at some point adopted that if you said you wanted me to write a song about such and such and needed it by tomorrow, you would have it. It's because I just think if you're a songwriter, you should be able to write that song, you know?
Right.
And so I've not had those creative lulls or whatever, but at the same time though, I'm not forcing myself to do it.
Yeah. Unnaturally.
Like right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you probably always have your like writer's goggles on where your antenna is probably so keyed in. Like if you see something, you get a picture of it so you can write, or if you hear something,
yeah,
you're probably always open for that.
Well, and that's the other thing too, is when people say, when do you write? And you say, well, really, you're kind of always writing.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of being disciplined in a way to capture all that stuff as it's rushing by and through the mind and, you know, under your fingertips when you're playing an instrument or whatever. So just be able to capture that stuff because it's fleeting sometimes and you can lose things. I've lost an idea in the last couple of weeks. I know full well I did because I was like, I said something. I was on the phone with somebody and thought as we were talking, oh, I need to write that down. And I should have because I forgot it, you know?
Yeah.
But, yeah. You just kind of have to be, and in some ways I think you're really kind of always writing.
Yeah, I understand that.
Mm-hmm.
2 more questions, man, and I can't thank you. I really can't thank you enough, man. This has been a lot of fun. I've learned a lot, and thank you for all your generosity of your time.
Yeah, I appreciate the time, and you are wanting to talk to me. I mean, somebody interested in the stories it's a treat for me. So thanks for letting me do it.
It's my total pleasure, believe me. Yeah. Toughest decision you've had to make or most difficult thing you've had to do?
Gosh. Oh, man. Well, I suppose probably just because of the circumstances surrounding when I quit the Whiteheart group.
Yeah.
You know, there was the security of knowing that as long as I stayed with it, you know, we were going to be getting back on the bus within, you know, a certain short amount of time and going to make another record. And so you get used to having, you know, something in your life. I'm married for, you know, a couple of years at this point. But even my wife at the time, Tracy, she wasn't too keen on making any kind of big life change, you know, because she moved here from Michigan, got married. She had just, you know, gone and she was just fresh out of grad school when we got engaged.
I thought you said Illinois. Sorry.
No, that's Illinois is the school that wants to do the Zoom class here. So.
Oh no, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't know. Yeah. Wait a minute. You told me you were in. Wait a minute. Where were you? Halloween, South Bend, Indiana.
Oh, South Bend, Indiana was where I met her.
Oh, okay, but she's from Michigan. I'm like, okay.
So. Well, let me just go back to that story real quick. See, she didn't want to come to that show. She was in grad school in Kalamazoo, and wow. she came home on a Friday to surprise her family that she was going to be home for the weekend. They were headed out the door and dragged her to the show. She didn't even know who Whiteheart was.
How funny is that, man? This whole thing is like,
yeah, there's so many of that. If again, what are those dominoes? You know,
yeah.
She stays at grad school that weekend. You know,
that's crazy, man.
Yeah. So anyway, she's from Michigan, and I forget where.
It was a toughest decision.
Oh, the decision. Yeah, because
Yeah, about
so
Whiteheart.
she had made a lot of big life choices, and so the fact that I had said early on in our marriage that I was thinking, you know, I wanted to quit the group and stay home and try to play sessions or whatever, it just brings in this unknown factor again. Because you know, to say you're going to play sessions, you don't know what your schedule is for the next 2 years or whatever. To say I'm playing, when Garth called me about the stadium shows, it was, will you do stadiums with me for 3 years? Well, you know what you're doing for 3 years, but will you do sessions? Well, somebody said, why don't you go play sessions? You don't know what you're doing for 3 weeks.
Right.
So those 3 weeks pop up and somebody calls you about them. So it was just a little bit more of a scarier time, you know.
More uncertainty.
Yeah. And so, but I mean, I've never felt like I was at any kind of crossroads kinds of stuff in my life. I always kind of had that, you know, I trust things will be all right.
And last question, biggest change in your personality over the last 10 years, and how much of that has been intentional and how much has just been a natural part of aging?
Wow. Well, I think, oh gosh. Well, obviously, as we get older, we hope that we get wiser. And so, I mean, and part of that has to do with, you know, instead of being a 20-year-old guy and saying, well, I played this talent show and I played some free sessions at Belmont University. That's my experience.
Right.
You know, so now I'm 61. I just turned 61 years old. And I have so much more experience, and I can mine out of that experience the lessons that I think this songwriter at Belmont needs to know from somebody that's kind of been there and maybe been around a little longer. So I'm constantly revisiting all of these experiences. And again, like I mentioned before, when I survey all of that stuff from my life, it causes me to see things in a bigger picture way. Whereas, you know, early on, I'm wanting to play sessions, so I'm panicked if I'm not doing the right thing to make that happen, or if I'm not equipped for it or whatever. But realizing, I'll say that's another big thing that's, you know, happened over the course of the years for me. Instead of, you know, wondering, what am I going to do? How am I going to use what I know how to do? What's going to happen to me? What kind of career? Where am I going to work? Who am I going to work for? All those things. At some point for me, it was the thinking shifted over to, this is a calling that is on my life. And once I realized that, I was more at a peace about everything. You know, somebody's, you know, not treating me right in a business way, or I'm not getting this song cut that I thought, or what they said was going to happen didn't happen. All those kinds of things sort of lose their the ability to, you know, have power over me or whatever, just because I've become this person that has learned to trust that things are going to turn out the way they're supposed to turn out. And so realizing that it's a calling on your life makes a big difference. And a lot of times I will share with, you know, the group of up and coming songwriters at like a Belmont, you know, do you want to be, you know, rich and famous, or you want to be a star? It's all well and good, but, or is it a calling? And then I will follow it up and say, have you ever heard the phrase that God doesn't call the equipped, God equips the called? I said, because,
that's cool. I never heard that.
Because I've answered this call years ago. I mean, I rode that gospel bus. I've done lots of things over the years that weren't the greatest paying jobs by any stretch of the imagination, but I felt like I was answering a calling. And I've seen over the years how God has continued to equip me to answer the call, to keep going, and be it the way a guitar finds its way into my hands, or this artist swings a door open for me to walk through. Hey, come play this dobro solo for me.
Right.
Come do this, come sing that same background part, come produce this record with me. So those things, and when a Garth calls, or Frampton and Bonnie Raitt and Ricky Skaggs, and when those things happen, I mean, that's the other thing I'll say to him, kind of tongue in cheek with a little bit of a grin. You know, I'll say that another way, you know, it's a calling is if you get called all the time. So maybe if you're being called all the time about some particular thing, you know, sit up and take notice that may be something you're supposed to be doing for this season or for a long time or whatever. And I say, so I get called all the time, and I say, you know what the answer is? Yes. Can you come play for Brightstone, Adults with Needs charity? Can you come play for St. Jude's? Can you go walking in and out of the rooms at Vanderbilt on Musicians on Call, playing for patients? Can you do? And the answer is always yes, yes, yes. If I can physically possibly be there, the answer is yes. And so I think that one way to describe it is songs like Change the World, a stadium tour with Garth Brooks, working with Peter Frampton for 21 years now. All of these things happen so that I can keep saying yes for these other things.
Right.
So, I don't know how else to describe it other than Change the World happened so that I could be available to go do these other things for nothing.
Right. Right.
And so it's like, if I were only doing things for nothing, I would still try to do it. But God has been so good to me. Keep doing that. I'll take care of you. And that's what I've seen in my life.
I like that, man. God doesn't call the equipped, he equips the called. I like that, man.
Yeah, somebody else said that, but I've heard that. I've been hearing that for many years now, but it sort of resurfaces every once in a while and hits me hard again.
What's better, that or it's like diarrhea, it runs in your genes?
Well, both. Whoever said both, great philosophers. I mean, Jerry Reed had a way of cutting to the chase. I mean, he had a way.
I love people like that, man. Let me tell you.
Oh my gosh, yes, yes.
You know, don't piss on my back and tell me it's raining out. You know, just get to it. Yeah. Hey, listen, I can't thank you enough. I have nothing to promote for Gordon, but I will tell you that when Garth Brooks goes back out on tour, come check him out. He's supposed to be February 21st, 2020.
It's actually the 22nd. Right now is Vegas Stadium.
Vegas.
Where the Raiders play. We were supposed to be the first event there, but hopefully they'll let us in there in February and we can get back to work.
Man, I hope so. Hopefully now that the vaccine is out, I don't know what's going to go on. You know, it's weird. They're having have you ever played in your earlier years down here, Janice Landing in St. Pete? Mm-mm. Man, I don't know how they're doing this. It's an outdoor club. Normally they pack it so tight. It's like, I hate going there because you got rednecks spilling beer all over you and stuff. Oh, I mean, it's not their fault. It's like so tight, but they're having a social distancing show that I don't know how the hell they're with Blackberry Smoke with your, you know, I know you did some work with them.
I love
those guys are great. Yeah.
It's just something funny. When I got asked to write with them, Dan Huff was thinking about producing them. So he called me and said, would you write with this group called Blackberry Smoke? Just think Skinnerd is what he told me. Cause you know, he and I, when we were in high school, we got Skinnerd, you know? And I said, well, sure. You know, and I show up and there are these four dudes that look like they're all in Ken Burns' Civil War documentary, you know?
Oh, I know.
And they're all sitting on the sofa with the coffee table in front of them, staring at me, you know, and they've got the beards and the
totally long hair.
And each guy had an Apple computer in front of him and just staring at me, ready to start typing away. And I love those guys. That was a great experience.
I had Paul and Charlie here on the show. They're real sweet guys, really nice guys, man.
Well, I'm pulling for them. They're good people and talented.
Very.
I've had a couple of songs. Me and Ricky Medlock wrote one for them, and then I wrote the other one with the fellas in the room that day.
You ever work with 38 Special with those guys?
No.
Okay. They're kind of another.
Yeah.
Anyway, so go see Garth and you can check out Gordon Kennedy. Man, thank you for everything. I'm going to,
been a blast, man. Thank you.
Yeah, likewise. I'm going to just hang on a second. We'll wrap up and let me just say goodbye to everybody and thank you again. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this, please share it on your socials. We appreciate your support. Thanks very much to Gordon Kennedy. Man, he spent so much time. His beard has gotten thicker since we first started. And
yeah,
so
I want to look like Leland Sklar if we do part 2.
Thank you for that. And most important, man, remember that happiness is a choice. So choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitar, and have fun. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. I am out. Thank you so much for everything, brother.
Bye now.